fourth annual series of volunteer workshops that we run every year, and we have good attendance at those, and they're very popular, and we have strong support for those. We actually have one coming up in a couple of days, of volunteering for employment. We're really proud of those, and we also offer an annual day-long at King's Tech, and this is our fourth coming up, King's Tech, a volunteer leadership symposium, where we spend a full day. We start at 8:30 in the morning and we go till about 3:30 in the afternoon. We run 8 volunteer workshops concurrently, lunch, and a guest speaker. This year's guest speaker is Danny Graham from Engage Nova Scotia, and he'll be talking all about the theme of our this year's conference, which is creating change through volunteerism. So that should be an excellent one. That's coming up in May 15th. We offer expertise to local organizations in volunteer development. We network with the nonprofit community to disseminate opportunities to build capacity around volunteering. And as I mentioned before, we have this exciting development that we started last year. And our actual our kickoff was back in November 2nd at our location at the County Fair Mall. And we have partners with Nova Scotia Communities, Culture and Heritage and Volunteer Canada to be the host site for the new project called Volunteer NS. And I'd like to thank the mayor, and there was a couple of staff members, I forget exactly who was there, but there was two or three of you from the town of Kentville, if not more, who came up for that launch, and we really appreciate your support. And it was a big day. Unfortunately, we were upstaged by a Irving Shipyards announcement that day, so we didn't get as much press as we wanted that day around the province, but we're working at it, and we're really coming along well with that website. So with that, I'm going to turn you over to Jim to talk a little bit about Volunteer NS, and then we'd be happy to answer your questions afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, volunteerns.ca. Show of hands, anybody been to the website yet? Awesome, good. All right, so as Bruce said, we are a partnership between Volunteer Canada, the province, Community Cultures Heritage, and King's Volunteer Resource Center. So some problems that we identified was there, Nova Scotia has always been a leader in volunteerism in Canada. But most other jurisdictions across Canada has some sort of centralized database for volunteers to go to, for organizations to post their opportunities. And Nova Scotia didn't have that. So we definitely needed to have something in place. We wanted to address all aspects of our community, youth, seniors, diversity, service groups, you name it. We want to address everybody, including people who need offline solutions. So we partnered with Nova Scotia 211. So if there's a newcomer, for example, or a senior doesn't know how to use the internet very well, they can still call 211, and 211 has access to our database through me, and they have their own extensive database as well, and get communications going there. So we needed to modernize our volunteerism. So what Volunteer Nova Scotia is a free, searchable, and centralized database. Organizations come to us. We have over 200 now since November, which is impressive to me. And we have nearly as much opportunities posted as well. So definitely drop by and take a look. We're using technology that's it's called Volunteer Attract. It's used in other jurisdictions as well. So it's a very robust solution, and it's being customized to us through my relationship with the technology guys and my communication with all the stakeholders of the website. So I'm kind of like a product manager for the website, and I can funnel those requests and build something better for Nova Scotians. It's an amazing partnership. It's secure, safe to use, and we're very concerned about privacy, so we're only collecting information that's needed. So originally we were collecting resumes and things like that. We're not doing that anymore. It's just your postal code and county, so that we can facilitate some sort of geography when you're doing a search. So this is a component, so I want to briefly just go over so you can understand. On the left-hand side, that's how organizations will use the site. They'll come, they'll put in their opportunities, which imparts skills, interests, locations, And that's the major pivot points that we will collect. On the right-hand side, volunteers will come to the website. They can do an anonymous search. They don't have to put in any information about themselves at all, or they can create a profile, which collects the same pivot points, skills, interests, locations, etc. So that's the database in the middle. We connect the two in that fashion. If you were to create a profile, organizations can then manage your applications much more effectively, which is nice. But as a volunteer, you can also save your searches and bookmarks. And when you come back to the website, you can pick up where you left off, which is great. And down at the bottom, we have email alerts. So another step forward with the website is when an organization sets up their opportunities, they can get email alerts anytime there's a new applicant that's taking a look at their opportunity, or if there's an actual application take place, we step them through that. We'll send them emails so that we're communicating effectively, what's the step currently with this particular prospect. And on the flip side, volunteers, you can go to the website and say, okay, I'm a male, I'm looking for board opportunities, I live in Kings County, and send me an email anytime something new comes up. So it's proactively sent to you. You no longer have to go to the website every day or every week or every month. We'll do it for you. So that, in a nutshell, is what the website is, but I wanted to briefly, depending on how much time we have, just go through the website. This is it. You can see a nice image of Cape Split. We're proud of the Kings County heritage of this website. The Kings Volunteer Resource Center is hosting it. I think it's a great thing that this is done locally here and that the rest of the province is taking note. In fact, the rest of Canada is taking note, because Volunteer Canada is an active participant. The technologies from Ontario, they're taking note of how much, interest is coming from the province, and all these feature requests that we gather to build a better Nova Scotia website, they can integrate into their technology for other people. So we are becoming a leader in numerous different ways using this website. So essentially, if you just come in, you can see how we divide volunteers, youth, seniors, and organizations, and I'll touch on the others if we have the time. But essentially, just come into volunteers, and you can click on organizations and take a look at the over 200 that have already signed up. So it's fairly robust. I don't want to spend too much time going through that.
There's over 30 for Kings County.
And you can click on positions as well and search through these. So this is a more direct path to get to your opportunities. You can also, for each page, there's a map. You can click on the map and drill in. So if you have a particular location that you live in, you want to find an opportunity to volunteer for, you can just drill in. Or let's say you're going to spend the summer in Cape Breton. Maybe you can just click on Cape Breton and drill in. Maybe there's a beach cleanup you want to participate in the summer. You can do that as well. Let's take a look back here. You can conduct searches as well, a more individualized search. So I mentioned boards. You can click on boards, for example, submit, and the next stage of eligibility here, you can look for an individual group or ESL. Groups are important. You can search for group opportunities if you're a classroom, for example, a university. There's sometimes opportunities there. Your gender, age, and where you live. So if you don't select anything, it defaults to everything. So these are all the board opportunities in Nova Scotia that you can present yourself for. So you can just click on an opportunity you like and take a look at further details about the position. It does go into a little bit more detail. And then there's multiple ways of contacting the organization here. In this particular case, you can download an application file as well. I believe Halifax Regional Police does the same thing. They have an application file that you just download and fill out. But I think the overwhelming way of doing it is just you can click on that link and you're sent to the organization's website. They generally have a landing page set up for volunteer opportunities, and then that's where the handoff takes place. We don't collect any private information. At that point, we do the handoff, and they start to collect, police checks or vulnerability check or resumes, things like that. So, any questions on the website at all?
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Worship. Thank you so much for your presentation. I was fortunate enough to attend the Provincial Volunteer of Nova Scotia Awards. Is that what it's called?
Oh, yes.
Last week, and I was really moved by the amount of volunteers there are across Nova Scotia and the acts of kindness that they do. And so, thank you so much for the good work that you do, because this is incredible for our province. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Councillor Maxwell.
Thank you. Thank you for a presentation. It was great. And as you heard, we have a local organization that is really looking hard for volunteers. And perhaps maybe we can make a connection here tonight. They can get on you can get on your list. So that would be good. Thank you.
Thank you both very much.
Welcome.
Thank you.
All right, our next
Oh, Zach's up.
our next presentation is Kentville Business Community with our very own Zach Best, your quarterly report.
Hello, Mayor Snow, Council. Thank you for having me here. I'm here to present our first quarterly report of 2019. I got lots to go over, so I'll get right into it. First, just on behalf of KBC, our events committee, and our multicultural hair steering committee, we want to thank Council for hearing our proposal last month and going forward with the electrical upgrades in the town square gazebo. These are going to go a long way with a lot of events going on in town square this year, and specifically helping our multicultural fair this year. Our facade program, our deadline was April 1st last week, and we have approved 8 applications. You can see the recipients for this year. We had several first-time applicants this year, which was great to see, and we decided this year to cap it at $25,000, as we'll discuss a little later in our financials. And we also added a section to the facade program manual with details about the accessibility grants through the Nova Scotia government to help businesses know about what's available to them as we try and push for more accessibility within Kentville. Our events committee is working hard to plan this year's events. Our multicultural fair will return August 24th. We've already got several great performers confirmed. And of course, with the electrical upgrades, there will be increased capacity for food vendors and vendors through there. We've been looking at a potential new event coming in May, so stay tuned for details on that. And we've got a preliminary meeting with Devour coming up on April 17th. And of course, all our other decorating contests and other draws and things are a go for this year. So we're looking forward to all those. So on March 6th, KBC held its 2019 strategic planning session. We had a lot of great discussion and insights about Kentville from this session. And I can say at this point, our new strategic plan will be a lot more refined and focused on some key objectives that we want to look at, and will be a lot more action orientated going forward. There were 3 major priorities that came out of the session. One was a comprehensive communication plan, a membership renewal campaign process, and creating a supportive environment for businesses and the town. So I'm really looking forward to focusing on these things going forward, and getting our new strategic plan pulled together and out there, and being able to really work at it. As for more business development, we've slowly been making new updates to our website. We've added a business contacts page, a link to BizPal, which is the Nova Scotia government's tool for businesses, helping them to find different permits and different things like that, as well as an accessibility page. Trying to really create a more comprehensive website which adds business services, marketing, and communication. So on just recently, KBC partnered with the Acadia Entrepreneurship Center to host our first joint event here in Kentville. It was called The Huddle. It was a very interesting event and brought a lot of different folks together from different backgrounds. We had people from throughout the valley, and a couple actually came all the way from Halifax to this event. And it was great to see just different ideas coming together and looking at different projects. So it was one of the first events we held together, and we look forward to more with them. And I've continued more partnership building with several other organizations within the town, which are all ongoing. And we've been doing a little bit more research about statistics here in the town, and I just wanted to run one nice one by you. Kentville currently has a 96% occupancy rate for commercial properties with street frontage, which is we are very proud about at this point, and it's great to see. So quick financial update. Attached are our financial statements as well as our 2019-2020 budget. We ended this fiscal year with a deficit of $26,000, which is covered by our capital reserves, but was actually a little bit under budget from what we had anticipated of $30,000. So we're happy with that. And as you can see, we are projecting a balanced budget for the upcoming year. To do this, we decided to cut back the facade program and limit it at $25,000 and shift the special projects and events funding to that specifically. So we're happy to announce that. So finally, I'd like to go over things we've been working on within the signage bylaws. So over the past several months, the KBC Board of Directors have been looking closely at the signage bylaws and the newly adopted land use bylaws. In that time, the topic has been discussed at multiple board meetings, and a bylaw survey was conducted to gauge the thoughts of the business community on this matter. Also, Council and KBC Board took part in an enforcement survey to gauge the priorities of specific bylaws. So our survey was sent out to our mailing list of 156 individuals that make up business community here, and we received a total of 31 surveys submitted. So I'd like to go over just a few of the highlights from the survey. The full survey results are also attached. So the first one I'd like to go over was we asked if the town plays a role in regulating signage, and overall the majority of respondents said yes, that the town does play a role. We asked if they're happy with the types of commercial signage currently seen around town, and as you can see, 94% are either happy or somewhat happy with the signage, with very few saying that they weren't. We asked if they felt there should be more or less restrictions, and as you can see, 75% felt that the restrictions are either adequate or there could be less restrictions. We also asked what level of enforcement businesses would like to see on signage. This was a little bit trickier to ask, as you know, because we said, well, soft, medium, or strong, but what exactly is that? So for soft, we said, you know, more of suggestions, medium, warnings, and strong, more, you know, fines. So 65% would like to see soft to medium enforcement on signage. So then we asked some specific questions about changes we saw in the bylaws, and the first one was the ground signage would be changed from 75 square feet to 25, and we asked if 25 was an adequate size within the downtown, and you can see that 35% said no, it was not, and 19% said yes, where we had 25.8% saying unsure. We think this is more because it's hard to say exactly, you know, is it enough? You know, 25 square feet may be enough for a certain space, but not for another space in the downtown. So that's where we left that up to. We also asked about window signage, and that it will be restricted to the ground floor and up to 40% of windows. And as you can see, 40% said no, that these they did not agree with these restrictions, and 30% were unsure again, and actually 26% said that yes, it was enough. The final one we asked about specific changes was have to do with digital signage in the downtown, and 40% do agree that it should be prohibited in the downtown. Just a couple other takeaways that we decided to put into the survey, not directly about signage, was the first one was about parking level enforcement, and you can see that 56.7% are happy with the current level of enforcement, and with 33% saying that the enforcement level is actually too harsh at this point. And we asked if they felt there is a parking problem within the downtown, and it is fairly split, actually, between yes and no, which we think goes a lot to perception and what each business owner thinks. So the last part I'd like to point out was we asked, what were the concerns of business owners within the downtown? Not so much as are they being addressed or not, but what are their overall concerns? And so the top three are loitering, parking, and smoking, which I think reflects very well as to what council's been doing with regards to those certain things. So, and you can see that a close fourth was signage and as well as speeding in the downtown. So a few conclusions the board came up with through this data is that overall businesses do seem happy with the current signage around town. Very few feel there should be more restrictions, and soft to medium enforcement is preferred when it comes to signage. So after careful consideration, the KBC board would like to recommend the following three amendments to the land use bylaws. The first is that the maximum size of ground signage be returned to 75 square feet for the C1 zone to allow more flexibility for businesses in different areas to have that capacity for a larger sign. Restrictions on window signage be lifted and allow upper level window signage if occupied by a commercial tenant. As well as three, that commercial tenants in multi-unit commercial buildings, such as Town Square Mall, who do not have street frontage, are permitted one wall sign up to 20 square feet. We put that in there because we feel that we don't want to have the risk of losing a tenant for these spaces where right now we do have 96% occupancy rate with street frontage, so we want to be able to fill these spaces as well and have them have the ability to put up signage as well. So that's my presentation.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Zach. And for your information, your LUB amendment request is under new business, item 8B.
Great.
Okay, and are there any questions for Zach? Okay. Deputy Mayor, please.
Thank you, Worship. Hi, Zach. That was a great presentation. Really good. 75 square foot sign. Where is an example of one that we have right now?
So one example would be the signs over at Valley Tire or Family Tire.
Okay.
Those are quite large.
Okay.
So we want to be able to accommodate signs like those in those areas. And I believe, I'm not sure quite the square footage of the new sign that's gone up at Main Street Station.
Okay, but that's probably close to
Yeah.
75 square foot. So you just want people to have that flexibility for it to be that large?
Exactly, right. We don't want to, from the data and our talks, we realize that, businesses really don't want more restrictions on their signage. So we just want to allow that flexibility for those businesses.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Andrew.
I like the idea of fewer restrictions. However, that does leave it up to a great degree of subjectivity. I mean, it's one thing to have a big sign at Valley Tire, but if you have a place along, the busier spot of Main Street and they have a sign that large, it's going to look quite silly. So, can those? It just creates a lot more work. But essentially, it only makes sense if that allowance is going to be there for that size. That it has to come under some kind of review that can be either given a yay or a nay.
Right.
It would seem. And if I could, I just want to say that when we, because I was involved in the facade program, and when that happened, it seemed we were presented a design with. Essentially told, this is what we want you to do. And that seemed as though it was a condition for having 50% of our it didn't end up being 50%, or whatever it wound up being.
Right.
But of our cost being covered through that granting program. And that was even down not just the design, but even the color scheme. And we were able to negotiate some of that. And have we lost that? Like when we engaged in that, it very much seemed like there was a theme, and the theme was it was a throwback theme. And what we were being told, we wanted to have a hint or a suggestion of kind of yesteryear, and it honestly seems like we've lost that with some of the facade work that we've seen done since that time. It doesn't seem that some of those groups may have gone through the same kind of review that we did, early, being one of the early recipients.
Well, the committee has been, I think, we still try to follow the guidelines that we had set out in the beginning, but we realize that, you know, businesses that are trying to come through this, as you know, it's difficult to get these funds, and that's why the program is here. So it's been a balance figuring out between following the guidelines strictly and working with the businesses and what they'd like to see. So I think this year in particular, we have tried to really focus in on that and make sure that it does more follow those guidelines and stick with that theme. But I think overall the theme has been to try and make the town look better. And that's been the underlying thing behind it.
Thanks.
Any further questions?
Your Worship.
Certainly.
Zach, thank you. Just for clarity, and then
Yeah.
I'm curious if our Director of Planning has any questions as well. Just number 2 bullet. Is it assumed that it would have to be on the second level, it would have to be the tenant associated with the occupancy on the second level? So if I had occupancy on the first level, but it was vacant upstairs and I own the building, could I put my sign on the second level?
I believe the board felt that if it was occupied by the commercial tenant, whether they own the building or if they like their business resided in that space, then that would be. If they didn't own the building and it was occupied by residential, then it wouldn't be allowed up there.
Okay,
Yeah.
just for clarity, thank you.
Yeah.
And point 3, you talked about a multi-unit building, and we know we have a few.
Yeah.
So that would be one sign at 20 square feet per business within.
Yeah.
So if you had, I'll just pick a big number, 50 units, 50 businesses inside, regardless of the square area that they occupy inside. So it could be just a little thing, or they could occupy the whole floor. That would be one sign on the exterior per business.
Yeah.
Okay, just for clarity. Thank you. And Your Worship, I didn't know if the director had any questions at all?
No.
Okay.
No, this is the first time I've seen it, so certainly we're going to have a look at it, and depending on the direction of council. We will certainly sit down with Zach and this group to put together potential amendments for council's consideration.
Okay, thank you very much, Zach.
Thank you.
All right, that's all of our presentations this evening. Thank you all for being here and making those presentations. And if they consider further business, that is under our new business. So we'll now have department reports and recommendations. Directors will present their reports and will be accepted into record with one motion at the end of the reporting. Specific recommendations will be moved individually as necessary, and councillors may present questions and comments with regards to the report to the directors at the end of each presentation. So starting with our finance and Director Kroll, your director's report.
Thank you very much, Mayor Snow. It's great to be here tonight to present to you some reports of a financial interest. Firstly, the report for the month ended March 31st, 2019. Actually, it's the year ended March 31st, 2019. Happy New Year to everybody. We all celebrated here April 1 when it rolls around. A busy time in the finance department. We don't have any Schedules A and B attached tonight. We have a shortened version of my report tonight. The Finance Department is working on the working paper files, and the financial statements will be prepared from those working paper files. The year-end entries are being quantified, and the financial position of the town is changing momentarily. Almost every 10 minutes it changes. So I didn't include those for your, but I do have a projection report which we can go over in a few moments. Regarding taxation, the summary of taxation, which is Schedule C, 98.9% of the 1819 levy is collected, and this compares to last year's figure of 98.5%. Total property tax outstanding as at March 31st is $108,053, and this compares to last year's figure of $147,240. This equates to, in total, 98.9% collected as compared to last year's figure of 98.3%. So essentially 100% of our taxes have been collected. Schedules E and F pertain to the Perpetual Investment Fund. The Perpetual Investment Fund, the Advisory Committee met on March the 13th to discuss the month ended February 28th. The financial position of the town is shown on Schedule E that shows the investments total $13.5 million. In the middle of page 2, you'll see the breakdown between cost and market of the financial instruments the town is invested in. The Statement of Reserves, Schedule F, for February 28th indicates that income totals $373,991. That's interest and dividends, while capital gains are $108,476 as compared to last year's figure of $37,422. Management fees total $34,138 compared to last year's figures of $32,163. The income check for 2018-19 was received the last week of March, and the total was $460,000. That came in on March the 22nd and was deposited as per legislation to the Town of Kentville Operating Fund. The account still has to be balanced once the statement comes in from the investment firm. There could be a slight adjustment. I believe we'll be asking for just a little bit more because we have to take the interest and dividends out, and I believe they did exceed the $460,000. Anyway, left to be balanced, so don't take that to the bank yet, but I'm thinking about taking it to the bank soon. Section G is the capital infrastructure program for the town of Kentville at the date of writing, and we're finalized pretty well on the capital acquisitions for the year. It's only 67.2% complete compared to our budget, but it totaled $1.89 million that we built this year. There were some large projects that were postponed, put off until this year just due to timing issues. So that's why the amount is so much lower than the actual budget figure. Section 8 includes the amounts due to and from the County of Kings. That's there for your information. And that's my very short report from the Finance Department for the year ended March 31st, 2019.
Excellent, thank you. Are there any questions for the Director on this report? Moving right along.
I prepared my last projection report for the year ended March 31st, and this was written on April the 3rd, and these are the figures that showed up in the afternoon on April the 3rd, but they're probably not the figures you're going to see at the end of the year. Some money has come into the town since that time, so I'm reporting sort of close to a very break-even position. Our final snow removal amounts have not actually been posted. We still have some outstanding things that are coming in. We are going to be over budget in our snow removal, and I think it's going to be somewhere between $20,000 and $30,000. So anyway, until we have that large number posted, my figures here really are just for information and to give you a little update on what the changes were between my last report, but certainly the financial position of the town is going to be, it's going from a surplus to a deficit almost every day. So anyway, I will speak to what the changes were on the day that I wrote this report. The revenue is decreased $67,100 in this last report to you. The reductions came, or the changes came as follows. Services provided has been moved up $900, and this relates to the secondment bill, the province of Nova Scotia. That actual line item came in $900 over the budget. On the sales of services, I've moved that up $22,200. $30,000 of that is provided by Kentville Police Services for background check services. That particular segment is going to be over budget, which is good news. But it was offset slightly by a reduction in Public Works reallocation to other funds, so $7,800 was cut there. The total increase amounted to $22,200. Own source revenue has been moved downwards, $94,900. Arena Ice, not Arena Rice. Arena Ice has been discounted $33,000. It is not going to meet its budget target. There may have been a slight error in the budget figure when it was crafted back last year, but we are not going to hit that figure that we have in the budget, so we have discounted that $33,000. I've also removed the investment fund contingency of $70,000. We have that in there if the town needs the money, but we have other reserve funds that we will tap before we would tap this fund. So that $70,000 was removed from this report. We have had some small increases in some other own source revenues. We've had $800 more in fines, $400 more for renting of the Calkin building. Interest has been moved upwards, $5,900. That's interest on taxes and on our bank accounts, outstanding taxes in our bank accounts. And miscellaneous Kentville Police Services revenue has been moved up $1,000 for escort services provided to the Valley Hospital for taking patients to the Halifax hospitals. So we are now billing out that to the province of Nova Scotia, and I haven't looked to see if they paid it, but there was no complaint from the person who got the bill, so I'm looking for payment. Conditional transfers moved upwards $4,700. This $2,400 comes from the Department of Justice. They gave some money for investigative services related to DUIs, and Efficiency Nova Scotia gave notice that they will give us another $2,300 for the completion of the Kentville Police Service bill examination that they had done on the heating issues that they had in that building. So that is where all the changes came from on the revenue side of the ledger. There are quite a few changes on the expenditure side of the ledger. We've decreased expenditures $91,400 from my last report. I've moved legislative down $3,300 more related to expenses for the mayor and council. General administration has moved upwards $4,400 from my last report. There were office expenses have gone added. We've added another $3,300 to that segment of the general administration budget. IT will offer us some savings of around $5,700. The buildings segment of the town hall administration has moved up $6,800, mainly due to heating costs and rental of the fence for the Calkin building, making sure that that fence was up there for part of last year.
Robinson?
Pardon me?
Robinson building?
Did I say Calkin? I meant Robinson.
Okay.
Sorry. Thank you. Protection Police Services has moved upwards $15,400, and it's purely related to remuneration, overtime, and backfilling mainly. Protection sales of services is up $4,400. It relates to part-time back check wages have exceeded the budget figure that we had crafted. On protection law enforcement, we've moved that down $13,300. It's a reduction in the legal expense. Crossing guards will be a little bit under budget, and the bylaw officer as well would be under budget. Protection other is down $2,000. We have some savings in animal control and occupational health. Transportation is down $3,600, and common services we're saving around $25,900. Most of it is coming from the remuneration segment related to the fact that we didn't have a full-time engineer. We have that saving offset by an increase in office expenses and an increase in small tools and equipment. On road transport, we are up to $22,300. We're going to be over in street repair, snow removal, street cleaning, and traffic services, and we do have some small savings in sidewalk repairs and storm sewer maintenance. Environmental health is down $5,600 from my last report. Solid waste collection should afford us $8,900 in savings, but Valley Waste has moved upwards $3,300 due to various audits and our share of the cost sharing related to those types of audits. Environmental development is down $3,600. This is planning and zoning is moved upwards in office a very slight amount, about $100. Community economic development provides us with a small amount, $500. Shade trees is going to offer us some savings of around $500, and debt interest is down $2,700. Recreation is down a small amount, around $200 overall for the whole department. Administration is down $6,100 related to remuneration, and there were some changes in the staffing and the personnel there this year. So that equates to around $6,100 in savings there. Programming is up $4,300 related to other programs in the Parks Division. Facilities has moved upwards $1,100. And the library operations is up $500 related to maintenance of that facility. So at the day I wrote this, which was on April the 3rd, we were looking at a very small deficit of around $3,800. But I do know that we've received some funds since that time that have negated that deficit, but I do know that we have some outstanding snow removal bills that have not yet arrived. So it's going to be close. And that's my report. Hopefully not too much detail.
All right, thank you very much. Are there any questions for the director on this report? Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. It's not really a question, it's just, I'm happy we don't have to touch that 70,000 contingency. It's good. Thank you, that's all.
And on to your next.
Thank you very much. I'm bringing to you the third withdrawal from the capital reserve related to the 1819 capital acquisitions. As you are aware, part of the funding for some of the capital acquisition purchases, it comes from the town's capital reserve fund. Invoices continue to arrive over the past month, and they require funding from the reserve funds. You can see that we have the budget from reserve in the first column, the amount that we've drawn in February, the amount that we drew in March, and the request for the month of April is denoted with the projects that require the funding. One of them being the 1819 projects for IT administration, $48,172.61. We're looking at the Green Areas Canada Cup project. Their $834.28 came through as an invoice to us in the past month. As well, we're looking at the soccer program has been completed this year, $5,944.24. Down below, you'll see overruns that need to be funded. We have Belcher Street sidewalk for small amount, $815.72. We have the sidewalk machine, we're looking at $255.56, and recreation equipment, $103.02. All told, I'm asking for $56,125.43 to fund these acquisitions. The capital reserve general allocation contains $776,644, and after the withdrawal, it will contain $720,519. So my recommendation reads that I recommend to Council Advisory Committee that the attached resolution be approved for withdrawal of $56,125.43 from the Town of Kentville Reserve capital reserve general allocation to partially fund several capital acquisitions as noted above. And after this approval, I ask that it be placed on the next docket of Town Council for ratification.
So moved.
Thank you. It has been moved and seconded that Council Advisory approve the resolution for withdrawal of $56,125.43 from the Town of Kentville Capital Reserve General Allocation to partially fund several capital acquisitions as denoted above during the year 2018-2019 to be ratified at the April 29th, 2019 Council meeting. Is there any discussion?
Question?
Voting is now open.
We had a power failure?
Yeah.
Lights
My
do-
finger won't even work.
It'd be amazing what you can.
Voting is now closed. Yeah. No, it's all good. The motion is carried unanimously. Thank you. Moving on.
The last report, thank you, Mayor Snow. I'm bringing a report on the debenture funding for the spring 2019. The Chief Executive Officer for Nova Scotia Municipal Finance Corp informed the town that they are releasing debenture funds to those municipalities that wish to tap long-term borrowing. The Town of Kentville requires debenture funding for TBR 18/19-01. The purpose was for various purposes. The approval limit for the temporary borrowing resolution was $1,089,400, and the funding that is requested is $731,400. The Municipal Government Act provides the legislative authority for a council to pass resolutions that set the parameters for a debenture issue. Nova Scotia Municipal Finance Corp requires that in order to streamline the debenture issue process, council must approve a pre-approval resolution and forward it to Nova Scotia Municipal Finance Corporation. You will find attached to this report the required pre-approval resolution attached along with a copy of the duly approved temporary borrowing resolution. A letter of commitment for this debenture issue has been sent to Nova Scotia Municipal Finance Corporation along with a copy of the temporary borrowing resolution for their easy reference. The pre-approval resolution will be forwarded to the minister once it is ratified. The deadline for this submission is Thursday, April the 18th, 2019, and therefore in order to meet this deadline, I ask Council Advisory Committee to hold a special council meeting today to ratify this resolution. The recommendation reads that I recommend to Council Advisory Committee that the attached resolution for pre-approval of debenture issuance be approved and forwarded to a special council meeting for ratification. After ratification, it will be forwarded to Nova Scotia Municipal Finance Corporation to complete our debenture issue for the spring of 2019. The resolution, TBR 18/19-01, the purpose is for various purposes, and the funding request is $731,400.
Thank you. We have a recommendation that the Council Advisory recommend approval of the resolution TBR 1819-1 for pre-approval of debenture issuance in the amount of $731,400 and forwarded to a special council meeting tonight after this meeting, the 8th of April, for ratification. And further, after ratification, it be forwarded to the Nova Scotia Municipal Finance Corporation to complete the town's debenture issue for spring of 2019. If I could have. Thank you. Thank you. It's been moved and seconded that Council Advisory recommend the approval of the resolution TBR 1819-01 for pre-approval of debenture issuance in the amount of $731,400 and forwarded to a special council meeting tonight, 8th of April, 2019, for ratification. And further, after ratification, it be forwarded to the Nova Scotia Municipal Finance Corporation to complete the town's debenture issue for spring 2019. Is there any discussion? Are you ready for the question? Voting is now open. Oh, damn. Voting is now closed. The motion is carried unanimously. Thank you. And thank you, Director.
Thank you.
And moving right on to Director Gentleman, Planning and Development, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Good afternoon, or good evening, Council. For the month of March, 9 development permits were issued for a building valuation of $622,000, just slightly over. This brings us to a year total of $1.6 million in building valuation. Our day-to-day activities, including civic addressing, we've issued 5 new civic addresses, processed 1 subdivision application, addressed 1 dangerous and unsightly premises call, and revisited the draft Planning Advisory Committee policy, which will be before this committee shortly after this report. Open Arms has appealed the decision of council not to rezone their lands on Oakdean Avenue to the Nova Scotia Utility and Review Board. Staff has worked with the town solicitor to assemble the appeal record, and the appeal is scheduled for June 17th at the Kentville Fire Hall. So the whole day's been set aside for that, with a potential second date the following day on the 18th. And potentially the evening has been reserved for anybody who wants to present some type of presentations to the board. The department continues to work with Blues Cap Curling Club to find a solution to their encroachment on Crescent Avenue. Several options were considered, and as anticipated, the club has forwarded additional information regarding the request. So there'll be another report after this, just a little update about specifically what they need and what they're willing to, what they can provide to address the issue. And KCA Lands, over the last week and a half, staff has been working with the owners of the property and their landscape architect going through the process for the requirement for site plan approval. They are hoping to have building permits taken out this year for at least the Ryan's Park portion of it, as well as potentially one of the apartment buildings that they're suggesting. Other than that, it's just the various mapping and GIS support that we provide for various departments and regular day-to-day activities.
Excellent, thank you very much. Are there any questions for the director? Councillor Ballin, please.
Thank you, Worship. Regards to the Open Arms, June 17th, what's the format for that, and who pays the cost of the rental of the fire hall?
The appellant, I believe.
The what?
Perhaps the appellant,
Appellant.
the person who appealed.
Okay. And the format is?
I'm not sure. So I've never been before one before,
right.
so perhaps
me to speak to
solicitor.
that?
Please.
Just like any other type of hearing, there's two members of the board that sit in judgment, and the parties present their case.
So it's a public meeting as well? I see.
It's a public hearing.
Must be 'cause it's in a
It's a public hearing. It's just like a court process, a little more informal, but during the day, it'll look just like a court process. There's the evening session that the director mentioned that's to obtain public comment, and then the next day is, the second day is reserved in case it's needed. And that remains to be seen because we don't know how many witnesses there will be yet. And the UARB takes care of arranging booking and that sort of thing.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? None. Moving on to your next report, please.
Okay, this is with regard to the Planning Advisory Committee policy. There was a request for decision to reenact the Planning Advisory Committee, or PAC. That was submitted by Councillor Gerard at the February CAC's meeting. A draft policy was provided to the committee, or to CAC, and at that time, CAC had essentially tabled the consideration of the policy and asked that members, if they had any additional information or suggestions to the policy, to provide them for tonight's meeting. And from what I understand, there were no submissions or suggestions from any members or council members. So I would recommend that if council is interested in reenacting this committee, that the policy as submitted last month and as attached be one that be adopted. And I guess essentially the main purpose of the Planning Advisory Committee would be to advise council on the amendments and the drafting and the changes to our three main documents, planning documents, which is the municipal planning strategy and/or land use bylaw, concurrent or otherwise, and the subdivision bylaw, and any development agreement.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the director on this matter? Councillor Maxwell.
I'm just wondering why you've chosen 3 members from town council and 4 members from the public. Is it necessary to have 7 people sit on that committee?
No, it's very similar to other PACs, plus it's the exact same format that we had over the years before we disbanded the PAC.
Okay. And the 1-year term for council members is standard, is it?
It has been, yeah.
Okay.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. Bevan, I think I asked this the last time, but I don't know how much discussion we get in about it. But with respect to the citizens that can sit on that committee, we essentially put an ask out, and whoever responds. But we typically don't put any. It would be preferred if you had this experience or that experience. Has that ever been done in the past, or what do you think of that? I guess would be more.
It's hard to say. I mean, certainly, I think as this is brought up in discussion last month, and as CAO Phillips indicated, there are some committees that really require some definite knowledge of whatever it is that they're looking at, the audit committee and something to do with finances anyways would certainly be. But I think it's an opportunity for those residents who have a vision for the town to help kind of format that somewhat through the PAC.
Okay.
However, again, it's just with regards to talking about changes to the land use bylaw.
Just
and
those
MPS.
specific.
So for instance, potentially the land use or signage amendments may be coming forward to staff or the department. So that would just be another body or group of people to sit down and think about the ask, the request, and the implications of that, and then submit only a recommendation to council.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions for the director? So I have some information that I'd like to present here. I had the opportunity to spend several days with Mayor David Mitchell from Bridgewater and his planning director, Jessica McDonald, at the Michelin Cities Conference. And
They took their planner with them.
Had to know that.
Could I keep it under my breath any longer than that?
okay, you went to the Dominican Republic. What can I say?
Just saying.
Okay, 2021 is going to be in Mexico. So pack your bags for 2021. So anyway, the planning director from Bridgewater attended the conference in Spain, and one of the things that Bridgewater has just recently done is adopt the town of Kentville model, and that is disbanding their planning advisory committee because there wasn't great value in having a committee who basically reviews something in the context of the planning strategy, the municipal planning strategy, and the LUB, and then they basically rubber stamp a decision from the director to council. Now, if they say something different, or it arrives at council and council doesn't like it, then council can get rid of it. If a developer doesn't like what the PAC says, then they just go over them and go directly to council. So in effect, we're putting an extra step in a procedure that other towns are adopting because ours is much more efficient. And at the end of the day, everything has to go through council. So whether we have, a couple councillors and citizens sitting there looking at a request for an LUB change or an MPS change, a subdivision change, or a development agreement, all of it has to be done within the context of our current documents or within the statements of provincial interest. And really, as planning director, you already do that, and then as council, we get to make the final decision. Well, we'll still be making the final decision, and if somebody doesn't like what the planning advisory says, they can go over them and come directly to council, or come to council after. So I just wonder why we would be going backwards when people are actually emulating our process. Councillor Andrew, you have a comment. I
couldn't say it any better. I don't understand why we would want to do that except to micromanage, and I'm not interested.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Maxwell.
Yeah, the way I perceive this is sort of what the planning director told us when she answered Councillor Savage's question, is that just a regular citizen might like to have some input into zoning and things like that, and how they would proceed, how they see the town going forward in certain areas. And so I kind of think that having citizens' voices would be beneficial in some instances where planning is going on. And how do the people in this town see subdivisions being set up? Where do they see subdivisions being set up? Where do they see commercial zones being set up and things like that. And I think that's always beneficial to ask the citizens and have a voice. And I think not including their voice is not a very good way to go forward, I don't think.
Thank you. I guess what I would say is that we're not muffling citizens. What we're saying is that this procedure doesn't give citizens any more control than what they already have, because they would be sitting around a table with a recommendation from the planning director, and they either say yes or no to it and send it to council. And then council says yes or no. And if the developer doesn't like what the planning advisory says, they can come directly to council. And every citizen on all of our changes to planning documents, LUBs, subdivision development and development agreements can stand up at that podium and speak. And their voice actually carries more weight at that point, because we're using it as part of our decision making. Where around a table, we don't hear what is there. And the other thing that we have to look at is that if they don't like, if a developer didn't like a decision that was made, it gives them the right to go to the UARB. Well, as long as we stay within the confines of what we say we were going to do and within the statements of interest, then we're always golden. It's when we deviate from the set of rules we've set, or the set of rules that the province has set around something, that we get ourselves into a bit of muck. And at this point, we've stayed out of the muck and done the right thing. So I just don't know that a planning advisory committee gives citizens a voice. It's just one more step in a procedure that can be vetoed at any point in the procedure. So I just wonder about that.
I just think that four citizens sitting on a planning advisory, if I know there's 4 citizens sitting on a planning advisory committee and a recommendation is coming from that committee, then I'm going to weigh that fact that those citizens on that committee have supported this position. And so whether it comes back to me on an appeal or something else, I still know what that planning advisory committee recommended. And so if I don't have that, then I just have, the planning director and our insight. And that's why I think it's valuable to have some citizens on planning advisory.
Certainly.
I don't want to take sides on this. I've worked in both environments, but I just wanted to make sure the process is clear. Every one of these types of issues that a PAC would bring to council is one that involves a public process. There will always be a public hearing. During your public process, you may even have a public information meeting to start the whole thing out, but it would initiate itself with staff and then PAC. If a PAC existed, then it would come typically to CAC. If you don't have a PAC, it would come to CAC. If you have a PAC, it would go to council. It wouldn't come to CAC typically, because it's PAC advises council in that circumstance, not CAC. CAC advises council, gives recommendations to council. So you would skip over CAC if you have a PAC. But there will always be at least one opportunity to go to the public in that process. I just wanted to make sure the process was clear, however you decide to go.
Thank you.
So if we're doing an MPS LUB review, and so it's supposed to be reviewed, I think, every 5 years, is that correct?
It's up to the municipality, 5 years.
5 years is our standard.
Necessary.
Okay, so if we're doing a review and we have a PAC, then those citizens that are sitting on that committee get an early look at the review process.
Sure.
And then they recommend back to council. Is that correct?
Correct.
So we would get an earlier look at what some of the citizens, primarily those on that committee, would think during that review, than waiting for the public.
Right, similar to the planning review committee that we had.
Exactly.
We just named it something different because it wasn't a
Right.
PAC.
Right,
as
but we would
defined.
have citizens on that
And we did,
committee,
yeah,
see, so,
yeah.
yeah.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. Bev, when we had a PAC before, did you find it brought great value, different perspectives, assist in any way? I'm always looking to the...
To be perfectly honest, no. I don't think that we had a really, for my time here, a really engaged group. They
Okay.
essentially would look at an application that came in, and they would look at the recommendation and just, discuss what the implications might have been to the application, or just in general, review an application. And they would just forward it forward based on staff's recommendation.
Okay, thank you.
But there wasn't a need from the group to really pursue additional information or information gathering.
And I think that's where my comment or question around the content of same, right, is really the content, the composition of the group would really make, I think, be, anyway, sorry, yes, thank you, good.
Councillor Pulsper.
Thank you, Your Worship. When was the last time that we had a planning advisory committee?
When did that go back? 5 years ago, maybe?
At least,
6 years ago?
Maybe more.
Maybe longer than that.
Parks and Recreation,
Yeah.
planning, parking, they were all eliminated at the
Yeah.
same time. 5 to 10 years, is that safe?
Yeah.
Okay.
I was on it, that was the last administration. It was,
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Ballin, please.
Thank you, Worship. I think to keep in mind, this is not a committee that would meet on a regular monthly basis just for the sake of having a meeting. This is more, as the solicitor said, more of a reactionary committee where there's, changes to the MBS. Zach made a presentation tonight of some things to consider. Well, that may be an item that committee would sit down, look at those 3 items, and then have their suggestion, recommendation, and move on. So it's not a committee we're going to meet once a month to look at the operations and micromanage the department. I'm not interested in micromanaging our great staff, but it's just more of a reactionary committee to meet, to look at certain things that are happening and have a suggestion, have input, and then carry on. I mean, you might not meet 6 times a year. Hopefully it will, because there's a lot of activity, but it's not a monthly, regular, scheduled committee. Am I correct in that?
I'm going to defer to the director here on whether or not they would take that recommendation from Zach and look at it, or if it would be a staff, and then staff would provide the report to the PAC. So if you could just...
Yeah, I think KBC, if we had a PAC, they would submit an application to amend the signage bylaw, the land use bylaw, as any other applicant would, making a change or a rezoning application or anything else like that. That would go through the review against the language in the MPS and LUB, but you'd have this other body reviewing it and having a look at it, and at least exchanging ideas potentially with the guidance of the planning department.
Okay, thank you. So we have a recommendation. Do we have a motion?
Well, just to be clear on the recommendation, I'm not necessarily recommending that we have this. If council wishes to have a PAC, this is what was drafted as a result of my direction in terms of what should be considered through a planning advisory committee at this point. So, should council wish to reenact PAC, the policy attached is what I would recommend.
Councillor Maxwell?
Yes, I'd like to maybe defer this until Councillor Gerard is back and can have a discussion on this. It was his idea to bring it forward, and I think he should have a say on the setup and why he believes it should happen or shouldn't happen.
Okay, then we will defer this to our May.
Yeah.
Oh my God, May.
Yeah.
May CAC.
Yes, please.
Councillor Ballin, did you?
Yeah,
Want to
all
add
due
something?
respect, I think that because the councillor is south of the border, he's not here, but he knew this piece of business was coming before us, and I don't see any reason why we should wait another month.
Are you prepared to make a motion?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm not prepared to support this recommendation.
Okay.
Are we going to vote on a deferral or not?
I'm just saying I don't think it needs to be deferred. I don't think it's necessary.
Request to defer, or, could anybody second that request?
Okay, so we
I
have,
think because Councillor Gerard is so bordered with his family for, a short period of time, we shouldn't give a reason that we shouldn't give an opportunity for him to have a say.
okay, then we have a motion from Councillor Maxwell to defer this discussion until the May CAC. Do we have a seconder?
Seconded.
Okay. So we have a motion that has been moved, or a motion that has been moved and seconded to defer discussion on this Planning Advisory Committee until the May CAC. Is there any further discussion?
Question?
And the motion fails. And the yeses were Councillor Maxwell and Councillor Pulsifer. All others were a no. So we have a second motion on the
So you have a recommendation, Your Worship?
a recommendation of council to adopt the Planning Advisory Committee policy. And that was moved by Councillor Bolland. And do we have a seconder on that one?
No.
Oh,
I'll move it, put it together on the floor.
oh, sorry.
No, he was suggesting something else.
Oh, okay.
So you have something before you
Okay.
to consider first, potentially.
I put words in your mouth. Okay. All right. So we have a motion. We have a motion. Okay. Do we have a seconder? Second. Thank you.
What's the motion?
So the motion is that council adopt the Planning Advisory Committee policy.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
That's fine.
That's still a good
We have to
motion.
vote on that.
We have to vote on adopting it. So it can be a yes or a no. We adopt it, it's yes. We don't adopt it, it's a no. Phew. Okay, is voting open? Hurry up, because I got to get there while I'm going. So we have a motion that's been moved and seconded to recommend the council adopt the Planning Advisory Committee policy. Voting is now, no. Flying fingers of fury. Voting is now open. Voting is now closed. And it's a tie, so the motion fails. The motion is defeated. It's a tie. So those that Okay, so you know who you were? Okay, those that voted in the negative are Snow, Savage, and Andrew. Those that voted in the positive were Bolland, Maxwell, and Pulsifer. And because it's a tie, the motion is defeated. Thank you. Thank you, Director. Moving on.
Okay, this is another item that was before CAC. It's a request from the Goose Cap Curling Club to acquire a portion of Crescent Avenue to build an accessible ramp. I think CAC understands the main request here. I've added a lot of maps and just a little bit of background information just to hold the whole history of Goose Cap Curling Club together in kind of one report. So essentially, if you look at, I don't have the maps number, but Mark, if you
Yep.
go down to the pictometry one, kind of the
Up or down?
pictometry.
Down?
Down,
Okay, yeah.
there. So essentially what they're looking for is the very end of Crescent Avenue. if you didn't know it was part of a street, you wouldn't think it was anything more than part of their parking lot anyways. It's an area of land of about 2,400 square feet. It is legally part of Crescent Avenue, but there is another map that also shows part of a survey plan that shows the front step of their building encroaches on Crescent Avenue and has been there for a number of years. In fact, back in the 90s, I think it was, the town provided a letter of comfort to the group to be able to maintain and continue with that encroachment, subject to the town needing to do any upgrades or any changes to the street. I think it's pretty clear that the need to maintain that, we don't need to have it. I think it's a portion of a street that can be easily disposed of. There is one additional letter that was submitted from the group beyond the other two that are in the package that were from previous council meetings or council and CAC meetings. But essentially what they're asking for is that we give them the area of land for $1, and there is a process that we can go through that once it's closed off as a street deemed to be surplus. It is a piece of land that, even if it sat on its own, is really of no benefit to anybody else other than the curling club, because it's their main entrance. Their main entrance into their facility, and really does not provide any benefit to anybody else. So their request essentially is that we deed that over to them for $1. And in doing that, there's a number of pieces that need to be addressed in terms of closing the road, subdividing the property, migrating the property, and things like that we talked about last month. So they came back and suggested that they would pay 50% up to $5,000 to go towards the whole process of getting that closed down, surveyed, and eventually consolidated and deeded over to them. So there's, again, a lot of maps and information and a lot of repeat information that was discussed at CAC last month. They would have to, and they have also indicated that there's 2 easements.
Yep, I can get that.
Next page, yeah. So if they were to acquire the land, the black area with the hatched inside is an easement that they currently have, a stormwater easement for the benefit of the town over the property that they own. If they acquire the street, they're going to have to extend that easement, and that's just a graphic representation of the extension of the town, what they would have to provide on that newly acquired piece of land that they would own. Plus the property to the south, I think it's 13 Crescent Avenue. They have a driveway. Can you point to it, Mark?
Yep, the blue?
If you can't see it, right.
Where the car is,
Right, so that's the car to a driveway, or a driveway. So they would have to provide another easement or right-of-way to the benefit of that residential area. And they're fully aware of all these easements that they would need to look after, so that house would be able to continue to cross over their land and access the driveway. They're fully aware of these issues on the property and are willing to accept those as easements. They've been plowing the property themselves for the last number of years, though it is a town street. So essentially that's their request. We have a general idea of what it might cost. I contacted our solicitor to try to get an idea of what some of our legal costs would be. At the high end, I think it was around $3,000 potentially, but there's no guarantee of what that might be. We could run into problems, I guess. We have a quote for the survey work that needs to be done on it, and that's $2,800. So there's costs associated with this. And again, they're requesting that they get it for $1. So I guess my recommendation is that we go ahead and try to find some way to provide this at a cost that we're not bearing a large cost, or the council understands or determines how much they would be willing to absorb to get this thing done. However, bearing that in mind, you may get halfway through a process and find out that, wow, it's going to cost a lot more than we've anticipated it to be. But maybe not likely.
All right, are there any questions for the director or deputy mayor?
Thank you, Your Worship. So, I mean, it sounds like a pretty straightforward process. It sounds it. So we should be able to determine fairly close to what the legal costs are going to be. I'm assuming it's Solicitor Matart that does this?
Okay.
I'm on the list, but not to answer that question. The staff have a quote, but there's things about this we know nothing about, such as the title to the land. And so there's things that we just don't know what we might find. But the reason I was on the mayor's radar was I just wanted to chime in and say that there is an advantage from a legal perspective. I've shared this with staff. An advantage from a legal perspective to not owning this, because you're ridding yourself of property that's part of a public street that you don't currently maintain, but yet you are responsible for. So although you may not have any costs right now, you do have that liability, and you could have the cost of maintaining it. So I would just encourage you to also consider that when you're saying, when you look at it and say, well, we may be giving this away, but we're also ridding ourselves of a cost and a liability for a piece of land that doesn't have any value to you. And it may, if it has value, then you have to keep that in mind, but it probably doesn't, I would suggest, and it does have value to them, and it doesn't change what's actually happening on the ground, protects everybody who needs the protection.
Thank you. Director Gentleman, I noticed that some of the things that you said needed to be done were things like a survey, migration, and this sort of stuff. Is there any reason, I mean, our curling club is fairly big with, quite a few members and members with different talents and different occupations, and, survey comes to mind, lawyers come to mind, and that sort of thing. Is there any reason why they couldn't solicit their own membership to get pro bono work out of them, and us and them not have any real money on the table?
Don't know. I suppose they could,
But do we have to do the work? Or could they do the work and pay us $1 and it's all done?
Well, we have a request from them to buy, I guess, us sell them that piece of land for $1.
Right.
So, if we were going to just close down, we'd have to close down a street. Because it is a street, it has to be closed down.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have to go through the whole process of disposing of surplus land. I mean, that's just the process that would have to be done. If they had somebody else who wanted to do all the migration work and survey work and everything else, I guess that's what we said back to them. I don't know.
So if I can just chime in on that, you're going to incur costs. You're not going to be able to avoid some of the costs, because there are things that the town must do as part of this process that you can't put off on somebody else. Now, having said that, if the curling club could obtain donations of certain services, then there are aspects of it that perhaps could be done by them. But their request's a little unclear to me. It reads as 50-50 up to $5,000. If they've got $5,000 to spend, your budget on this at this point is just a little bit more than that. So there may well be an opportunity for them to cover all of the costs. As I understand it, they've already done some preliminary survey work. I don't know whether your survey quote is from that same surveyor or not, because if it was from the same surveyor, then they've already got information from being on the ground. Whether that impacts the price or not, I don't know, but it might well. So the $5,000 that they appear to have may well cover all the expenses if they're indeed prepared to pay that entire $5,000. And it would happen much more quickly.
So is that what they meant, 50-50 up to $5,000? Or they'll pay the first $5,000 and then we pay whatever may be left over. That may be an option, since they are going to be acquiring the land.
Your worship, that's really for council to decide.
Yeah.
They've said we have 5,000, we're prepared to pay, that's what we're prepared to pay. That doesn't mean that you have to comply with that. It means, what do you want to do?
Exactly.
So we are making the assumption, we shouldn't, but we're making the assumption that you would consider the donation. So therefore, how far do you want to go towards the cost? You may also consider within the discussion, or perhaps even within the motion, but the discussion, it's assumed that we will communicate to them if you have the opportunity for any donation of service. We encourage you to do so, and please prove that you've done it before we write a check. You know, that kind of spirit can be noted as well. So anyway, it's really at this point, how much do you want to support this request?
Councillor Maxwell.
I don't know, to me, it just seems like a no-brainer that we would support this group, and it's, as has been stated, it's kind of worthless land, and I think we should support them. This is for disability access that they want to build, is it not? You know, and I just think, you know, why would we stand in the way of that? So that's where I stand on it.
Thank you. Councillor Andrew.
I just think adding something like what you said is a great idea, because they may not have thought there's an opportunity for someone to make an in-kind donation and actually get a tax receipt for doing something, contributing to something they're already part of and involved with. So it actually may create, I would say, an opportunity for someone.
Okay, so I think we have a motion out of this recommendation, and I think that I may have crafted the words, but I'm not going to put words in anybody's mouth, and I'll just say it out loud, and then we can decide if it's what we want to move and second or not. So we have a recommendation to direct staff to move forward to closing a portion of Crescent Avenue and deed it to Glooscap Curling Club for the sum of $1. And further, Glooscap Curling Club pay the first $5,000, with Town of Kentville paying up to, I don't have a number, but up to some sum of money, because we need to say how much we're willing to put on the table. And further, that Glooscap Curling Club solicit donations of service from membership. This is...
If I might, Your Worship.
Certainly.
The one concern I have from the town's perspective on this is timing. So, and I guess you have at least until the next council meeting. So perhaps that's the window for them determining what they can do towards the process. Because once council makes the decision, there's a number of things that need to start happening.
Right.
And I think in consultation with staff, we can probably identify those things that the town really needs to do versus what perhaps they might be able to tackle. For example, on the migration, just a simple one. The migrations could involve the entire street. This is just a very small portion of the street. So that's probably, from my perspective, something the town would do. It's to the town's long-term advantage to have done that anyway, and slowly but surely parcels of land around town are being done. I can tell you that our office has the list of deeds into the town and those sorts of things that we can do much more effectively and efficiently, likely, than anybody else. So from a timing perspective, certain things can happen much more quickly. So perhaps in that, if you gave them, and maybe it doesn't even have to be part of the motion, but if you gave them until council to identify those things that perhaps they can do instead of the town doing.
We could report back on that.
Yes, staff could simply report on that.
Okay.
Yeah. If you stuck with your motion, if that gets supported.
Okay, so cost up to, how much money do we want to put on the table?
The remainder.
Okay, the remainder up to, what if it was 20,000, the cost for the whole thing? Do we want 50? Okay. Not that I was trying to get a number, but, okay. So let me read this again. So we have a recommendation to direct staff to move forward to closing a portion of Crescent Avenue and deed it to Glooscap Curling Club for a sum of $1. And further, Glooscap Curling Club pay the first $5,000 and the town assume the additional costs up to $5,000. And further, Glooscap Curling Club solicit donations of service from membership. Is that solicit a good word, or is that an ugly word? So solicit is still good? Okay, and further solicit. Exactly, exactly. Yep. That's the one. Okay, thank you. Did you get that?
Sure did. Great one.
You're good. Yes, and Eric Sweat Equity. Okay, motion. Yep. Voting is now open. Oh, do you need?
Yep.
Sorry, wait.
Just back to what Solicitor Matart said, what if it's more than 10,000? Then it has to come back to council again. I think that the spirit of what you were saying, Solicitor Matart, is that if there was some dialogue that went on between Director Gentleman and the Glooscap Curling Club, that maybe they could work out essentially how much, determine how much, is that what you meant?
In discussion with staff, before this comes back to council, there'll be a much better idea of how much this will cost.
Right.
Once we know this is going ahead.
Sure.
For example, if we're doing the migration, we'll know the state of title before council.
Okay.
Indeed, that's going to be part of our work, and that won't be wasted money even if you decide not to go forward, because we can still migrate your street.
Right.
So those sorts of things can happen very quickly.
Okay.
And they are not contingent upon going forward with the curling club. But if we know that, that there is that intent, then we can start some of those things.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Yep.
All right. Before we go further, is there any further discussion? And everyone understands that what we're committing ourselves to, and we will have a full report before we move any further. As you will recall, this is only a recommendation to council. Okay, voting is now open. Voting is now closed. And the motion passed unanimously. Thank you. All right, Community Economic Development Coordinator. Thank you for hanging out with us tonight.
Thank you, Your Worship, and good evening, Town Council. This will be easier than the last two. The planning and content creation for spring and summer promotions is underway in our department, and a detailed schedule of appearance will be provided to Council at the May CAC. We're expanding our reach and our presence and focusing on some more interprovincial publications versus just kind of our local standbys. The Calkin Building's been on the market for 24 days and has garnered a respectable amount of interest in that short amount of time. There have been 6 private showings as well as an agent open house. In addition, the Facebook posts for the property have reached over 2,000 people, and the YouTube video has been viewed 31 times. I put a link in the report if you want to see what the video is, but basically it's just a representation of what a buyer would be dealing with if they purchased, and the listing has been viewed 1,345 times on various real estate sites. The planning department student from Acadia, who was Leanne Martin, finished her term with us on March 29th. She was a wonderful addition to the planning team and was successful in completing a number of projects, including the research for the development of a community improvement / placemaking program for Kentville and the writing of some Kentville content for the Nova Scotia Tourism website. The Community Economic Development Coordinator and the Active Living Coordinator will be partnering to further develop that community improvement / placemaking program. That is not the official title of that. Julia wanted me to make it very clear that that's not what we're calling it. That's a working title. We are going to be developing a pilot project to launch this summer, and the program's aim will be to support members of the community who want to act as project leads and execute a placemaking or community improvement project in their neighborhood. We're looking at focusing that on community art for our first round, but hopefully eventually expanding it to include other types of placemaking projects and community development projects. The new content, as I mentioned earlier, for the Nova Scotia Tourism website has been created and shared with that organization for upload. It should be live soon, but they haven't really provided me with a timeline, so we'll look to see that before Apple Blossom, and if we don't, then I'll get on my horn. KBC's facade program round 4 closed to applicants on April 1st, and the committee received applications from a number of new applicants, which was great to see. We were able to provide 8 applicants with funding in this round, and work on funded projects is required to be completed by October 31st, 2019. If I may just make a comment, Zach did a pretty good job of answering Councillor Andrews' inquiry about the application process and some of that earlier, but to be fair to Zach, he wasn't here when that was happening, and he probably missed the first 2 rounds of funding. So if I would add a comment, it would be that Open Arms was literally the first application that committee received. So they were probably following the process directly to a T at that time. Not that they don't follow a process now, but they're just a little bit more well-versed on what to expect from applicants and what the ability of those applicants might be. And also brand new board, brand new committee since that time. So hopefully that's helpful information. The next event, the Kentville Farmers Market Workshop Series, is a mandala painting class, and that's happening on the 13th. There are a couple of spaces left. I say that for our friends in Facebook land in case you're interested in signing up. The Farmers Market will be moving back to the Outdoor Center Square location on May the 15th, and everyone is encouraged to attend on opening day. There will be cake. A new supplier has been confirmed for the gateway sign at Eves Hollow, and our new vendor estimates about a 6 to 8 week turnaround period once the work can begin. The project has been pushed into the next budget year, so we will wait approval before moving ahead with the manufacturing. Footings and site prep have already been completed, so that's a bonus. We're ready to go as soon as the sign's done, and landscaping will take place once the sign has been put in place. I just noted there that I'm submitting capital project requests as well to the finance director. Kentville will be joining the Annapolis Valley Chamber of Commerce and other municipal units, including Berwick, Kings County, and Wolfville, and other valley businesses at the Saltscapes East Coast Expo. The planning team has been meeting regularly to plan and design the layout of our big booth space, and Saltscapes is happening April 26th to the 28th at the Halifax Exhibition Center. You can find more information about the expo itself online. We're really excited to be attending that this year. We'll be submitting 2 applications for the Beautification and Streetscaping Funding Program offered to municipalities by the province. The Beautification and Streetscaping Program is designed to support the development of attractive and inviting areas where visitors are enticed to spend money in a municipality. Key investments can rejuvenate areas, foster local pride, encourage economic development, and enhance the character of municipalities. Kentville is applying for funds to support the Gateway Signage Project and also the proposed development of a public gardens on Main Street. Applications for the Visitor Information Center part-time position have been collected, and hiring is expected to take place by the end of the month. I am happy to report we've received many more applications than usual for that. Kentville's participating as a partner in the Quality of Life Outreach Project being delivered by the province through Engage Nova Scotia. So by filling out the Nova Scotia Quality of Life Survey, residents can help ensure the issues most important to their health and happiness receive better attention by the province. Kentville will be supporting that initiative mainly through marketing and by encouraging Kentville residents who do receive the survey to follow through and fill that out. Apologies, Council, I normally include my meetings and events. I have not done that, but I promise I was here the last month. I can forward that to you if you wish at a later time.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Are there any questions? Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. Hi, Lindsay. Hi. The Beautification and Streetscaping Funding Program, how much have we applied for?
We haven't sent it in yet. The due date is April 30th, I believe, so those are still being worked on. I'll probably be asking for $10,000 for the public garden project, and I haven't decided what's going to happen with the Gateway project because this will be the second time I'm applying for that, so I just want to rejig a few things to see if I can't have a better outcome than in previous years.
And the public garden on Main Street?
So that's the property that we've talked about next door to the King's Arms pub. That's been offered to the town for lease for $1. So hopefully, if the funding comes through and council supports it, what we would have is a public garden accessible to the public right off of Main Street for our own use and enjoyment by visitors and downtown patrons.
That's awesome. Thank you. Okay, great. Thanks.
Councillor Pulsifer.
Thank you, Your Worship. Great report, Lindsay. I just had one question about our new tenant in the Cochin building. Is there any news of when she might be starting?
Yes, I keep in regular contact with her. The rent is being paid. She has had some I'll say things to deal with not related to the business that have taken up a little bit more of her time. So she's still optimistic that she'll be opening before the end of the month. I did see that there's some new equipment in there that's arrived this week, so there's definitely some activity. It is creating a buzz in the community a little bit. Where is she? What's happening?
Yes.
But as far as I know, everything is still on track.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? There being none, thank you very much. Parks and Recreation.
Good evening, Council. Oh, it's twist tied up here. Under facilities, our arena has closed for the season, and we've moved into event mode with our first event having taken place this past weekend. If you got a chance to get out and enjoy it, there was this monstrous tractor in front of the arena, and inside was a whole bunch of other John Deere. So we're happy to have John Deere days back in Kentville. Our parks are, still closed due to the wet weather that we've experienced. So our staff will soon begin to transition back to the parks, including opening the facilities and cleaning them up. It's a little bit hard with the current weather, but we're hoping 4 to 6 weeks and we'll be able to open things up. Our summer planning is well underway, and we're in the middle of our hiring process. The Flying Squirrel program continues to be on the third Saturday of every month at the Kentville Ravine, and there's currently discussions with the county to begin expanding the program to other parts of the region, which would be really great. Planning is still underway for our spring outside camp out at Oakdean Park. We've partnered with a great team from A for Adventure, and if you haven't heard of A for Adventure, then you can simply Google them. They're a group of folks that work really hard on making outdoors as accessible as possible, and they've been willing to partner with us to ensure that everyone, if you don't have camping gear, they can provide the camping gear to make sure that it's totally accessible. They also wrote the book A for Adventure, hence their name, if you're in the library anytime soon. Under capital projects, the Bonavista project is in progress and nearing completion, I'm pleased to say. I think there's a little bit more work to do. This weather's going to hinder the completion a little bit, but they've been able to install a number of pieces. Under public engagement and community events, the Weekend of Winter took place March 8th and 9th, beginning with a wonderful sledding party, and thanks to the council members that came out to that, and that included a community campfire. And the next day we held a scavenger hunt that was put on in partnership with the Annapolis Valley Scavenger Hunt, and it was quite successful, and thanks to councillors who were involved in that. It was pretty fantastic to see these teams running around of all ages and sizes and shapes and abilities. It was pretty impressive. Our leadership tea was held on March 27th, and this year our candidate is Miriam Bathwaite, and the child attendant is Chloe Stacy. So congratulations to both of these wonderful young women. This year we asked applicants to tell us what they would do if they were given $100, how they would give back to the community of Kentville, and Miriam said that her project is going to be putting a locker somewhere around town that has hats and mittens and scarves available in the winter months for folks to use who are feeling chilly. So we're excited to help her find her dream in giving back to the town of Kentville, so that will be an exciting project to work on with her. The Provincial Volunteer Awards were held on April 1st, and our representative this year was Nancy Beliveau from the Glooscap Curling Club. Thanks to our Deputy Mayor for attending on behalf of Council. This event was followed by our own volunteer awards, which were this past weekend. We honored 24 volunteers who serve our community. It was a fantastic event. We had about 60 participants, or 60 community members show up. And of course, a reminder that the home show is coming up, and it's one of our big fundraisers. You can see it in the revenue marks that Deb presents. And so please encourage everybody to come and attend. Meeting and events, a few key highlights. I had a meeting with KCA school around supporting their instatement of the Student Advisory Committee or School Advisory Committee, that schools have access to funding from the province if this committee is created. So there is now a position from Town Hall that sits on that. on top of a position that is currently filled by Councillor Maxwell with regards to the PTA. So the town is very much involved in the health and well-being of the school. I've also had a conversation with the Annapolis Valley Regional Centre for Education around community use of schools and what that looks like. There is some issues moving forward with the use of the facility, janitorial fees, monies that are available, and of the communication not really get through to all the various parties. This is a larger issue than just KCA, so we're trying to work on it from a school board-wide perspective, or Centre for Education-wide perspective. God, I gotta get that. I attended in Halifax an Interweave workshop, which is just a few folks were invited to that, and it's a really discussion around different ways of thinking and solving complex problems, and so we're looking at it with regards to some of the projects that we're doing here in Kentville and how we can find solutions differently, I guess, than we would normally. And I had a really great meeting with Autism Nova Scotia, who approached us in a partnership, and we're working on ways to provide swimming lessons for folks with autism this summer, and next winter providing skates for persons with skating for persons with a disability at our arena. So we're looking forward to that partnership, along with a long-term partnership with our camps and making our camps more accessible. And then the other one I wanted to talk to you a little about with the meetings was the SAFE. There's Safe Sports Summit. There's two different pieces going on in the province right now with regards to redesigning our sport and recreation delivery system, specifically around creating more safe environments. Safe Sport is focused on the sport system. Re-Sport is actually focused on sport and recreation. Both are looking at a more inclusive system, with one really focusing on the prevention of sexual harassment and assault in sport and recreation. So we're involved in those in various ways, and recently when we were down at the Valley South Shore Recreation Director and Coordinators meeting, there was another presentation and chance to provide input on that, but it's just something to keep in mind is what's happening right now in the sector. Council-related items, the Regional Recreation Needs Assessment will be presented at a joint council and stakeholder meeting on April 24th at 6 p.m. at the Louis Millet Centre. I've heard from almost everyone who's RSVP'd, so I appreciate that. This will be a chance to hear the results of the study from the consultant, as well as ask any questions or provide additional feedback before their final submission. The following evening on the 25th is going to be the public drop-in session, which will be held for the general public. So again, at the joint council meeting on the 24th, you'll also be there along with the invited stakeholders to one of the original consultations. And then the active transportation plan will be presented to council and staff on April 23rd here in Chambers at 6 p.m. And this will be an opportunity to ask questions directly to the consultant before final submission. So both of these reports should be in by the end of the month. Knock on wood. And that's my report.
Thank you very much. And we have a question. Councillor Andrew, please.
I just have a thought or suggestion. This actually will touch on something we're going to talk about later, but when we do work and expansion in the ravine, well, I had a discussion with a person who's, I would say, regionally, if not a provincially recognized Indigenous leader. And so we get into this conversation, and I've always had this beef with the preamble that I think the province needs to look at, that we all seem to do in different versions. You know, we're in Mi'kma'ki, it's unceded. Anyway, so I had that discussion, and this is what the response was. It seems like that is that is the government's way. Tell them what makes them feel good, and then we can move on to what really matters. However, so I just want to say that, and however, this person did say that they, from their perspective, they liked, as well as other people, they liked seeing Mi'kmaq names, place names. Mm-hmm. And I would say that's, I know it's too late. We have new signage, and it would have been great to have English and Mi'kmaq on some of our new signage. But perhaps when we do that trail system, which is, it's a natural, environment that we've been given stewardship over a time, it might be a great way when we have some signage there to have some Indigenous along with English signage.
Yeah, if I may, the discussion previously about the street naming, and just to be clear about my comments at that day, it was not that we don't name a street or name anything in Indigenous language. It's that if we want to engage in the Indigenous community, we need to understand that we can't ask them to meet our process. We need to acknowledge that there's a greater process here, and we need to be sensitive to that. So absolutely, we need to make sure that there is Indigenous and Mi'kmaq involvement in all of these pieces. With regards to the Kentville Ravine, I think signage, to your point, is just one piece of it. Absolutely. In fact, so because it's on federal property, we are legally required to have both English and French. I would argue that if we're going to move forward on an accessible trail, we also have Mi'kmaq language and Braille. So this is something that we can work on. But of course, if we want to talk about true engagement, then we need to start from the beginning and kind of move forward together versus coming in and we want to use your language for this. We want to, but we actually want to make sure that everyone feels comfortable in the direction that we're moving.
Well, I don't want to suggest there's a singular voice there either, but I think we just need to be, and I know your heart and head is there, to be much more sensitive to that than what we have been typically. And I know we're going to have discussion around that, but it was good based, when we talk about in our industrial or business park, this individual said that they feel really good when they go places and they see a word from a language they're trying to recover, right, and relearn. So anyway, I know you're the right person because I know you're engaging on that level, and I just thought I know there's going to be some signage. I mean, we talked about that recently, and it'd be great to see that. English and French is great, but there's other people, and
absolutely,
we need to recognize that process. So,
no, I appreciate those comments, and certainly I also have a lot to learn. But I think that as long as we keep talking about it, we can move forward.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Pulsifer.
Thank you, Your Worship. Rachel, were you considering perhaps any interpretive boards along or somewheres at the beginning of the ravine trail that would give a bit of the history or the description of what's in there and the Acadian forests and all that kind of stuff?
I mean, these are all up for discussion. To be honest, I haven't presented my capital budget to you, so I would say that this year is really, but thank you for approving it ahead of time. Way to spoil it. This year for me is really a planning phase. I want to make sure that we do this the right way, and then whatever we decide together moving forward. But I think that's the initial vision, that that we make sure. In fact, we have a planning intern. That's true. Students. We have so many of them. That's right, yeah. Who's working with the Friends of the advisory group for the Kentville Ravine right now to find points of interest that can be pinpointed along the trail, so that it's not just a point A to point B. It's actually, acknowledges the history, acknowledges the sacred spaces along the trail, acknowledges different pieces along those spaces, and then this is again my own vision. There would be interpretive signage in those 4 languages along the trail as well.
Yes. Okay.
But that is, again, we're one partner at the table.
We have a lot of information on the content of the ravine. It's because my husband did a project on that at university, so he saved his paper. So it's quite a few pages of his research and what's been in there, what's in there, how it came about, and so on.
Yes, and I've passed things on to you that's come out, and I presented at the Rotary Club of Kentville today at lunchtime and talked a little bit about this, and people remember swimming lessons and where that was. So it's just, absolutely.
Ski, mountain bike.
Yeah. So it's a really neat place from a history perspective as well. So we want to make sure that all of that is celebrated.
And one of our interpretive boards that they're just about done now, but one of them will be in English and in the Mi'kmaq language, because it'll focus on the beginnings of why Kentville is here at this point and how it came to be. So just wanted to tell you that.
That's fantastic.
Are there any? Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. Rachel just actually said about how she spoke at Rotary today, but thank you for doing that. I know that the group, I was in attendance obviously, and I know the group, they always appreciate when you come in. You have a wealth of information and it's great for the folks in Kentville and abroad that there are other members there, and so they really appreciate getting all the updates. So thank you for that. Yeah.
No further questions? Thank you very much. Chief, the floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. So I'll start with our stats. The auxiliary hours pretty consistent. They went up to 55, I believe. Yes, mine is 20-some, but I was missing somebody's. Training hours decreased by half. That's because we have 4 young officers right now, and so I haven't been able to pull the senior officers off the shift to send them on courses. I need them to kind of be there to look after the younger ones for now. So I do expect that to increase over the next little while. Vehicle stops were consistent with 187. Warning tickets dropped by 34, but sought tickets increased to 56, and foot patrol hours, now that the bitter cold has gone, has increased to 123. That's also probably in part due to young officers that are eager to get out there. Criminal code charges doubled to 32, and calls for service were up by 52. And our mental health calls were at 15. And again, I count a lot of this to young, energetic, want to show us that they want to be here in the town and do good work. So, and on that note, actually one of them found two open doors one night on foot patrol, just out walking around in the middle of the night, checking doors, and he found 2 businesses that were unlocked. So we made contact with the owners and had them come in and lock their businesses up. So young is good sometimes. So. And as well, our uniforms have arrived for the 2 auxiliary officers, so they've been in and picked those up, and we have training scheduled for them, so we hope to have them out and ready for after Blossom. Meetings are there, so DOJ was, they were up and did a pre-meeting about the domestic violence audit, and then they came back for 2 days, the 1st and the 2nd, I believe, and conducted that audit. We were given preliminary results, and then we appear to be fine, and they will present to the Police Commission on May the 17th with their final results of that audit. Crystal's House Board meeting was on the 12th, Kings County Senior Safety meeting, so I've joined that committee. We've been absent from that, but we have many seniors here. Actually, I think the percentage was about 26% here, so I feel that we have a place on that, so I've started to attend those meetings. I went to the Operation Lifesaver Annual General Meeting. It was Police Commission on the 15th, where I presented the preliminary budget. On the 22nd, the mayor and I met with a lady who was concerned about human trafficking. I think we're going to see an increase in interest in this because, as you probably are aware, the RCMP have been doing public education sessions, and the province has formed a task force. There'll be 4 officers from around the province that will be assigned to do human trafficking. It was open to us. I did not have anybody who was interested in leaving. The problem is the work is probably going to be based out of Halifax, and that creates a fair amount of travel. So none of my officers decided to submit their name. In March 26th and 27th, I went to an HR conference in Ottawa, and I say it was where I learned what not to say, just to be more aware of things and not get myself and therefore the town in trouble. Restorative Justice had a teleconference advising us of upcoming changes. And so currently officers, when they submit to Restorative Justice, say why the person should be referred to Restorative Justice, and one of the biggest changes in the new policy will be that the officer will have to say why they should not be put forward for Restorative Justice. So that's going to be a change in thinking, and it should result in more people going for that process instead of the court system. And on April the 6th, I attended the Volunteer Awards because one of our longtime volunteers, Harlan Woods, received recognition from the town for 19 years of service with us. And it doesn't look like he's going anywhere anytime soon. So, and as I'm sure you're all aware, we had a missing person that consumed a great deal of resources. We spent about a week searching for the person, and unfortunately we have yet to find him. So that file, while the ground search has been called off, the officers remain involved in any tips that come in, and we get the occasional tip of sightings, and so we then have to investigate those. And that is about it from that part of the report. So, yeah, the parking. So Glenn is back to just about full hours now. I think he's minus 1 hour a day, but pretty much back. So his numbers are starting to go back up, and as well, Glenn has been asked to crack down on business owners that are parking on the streets outside their businesses for extended periods of time. So he has done that, which is why you'll see that his tickets went from 30 to 62. It has not made him all that popular. The other thing that he's done is, I won't give you the time that he allows, but he's been fairly lenient, and he has also shortened that time. It probably won't be long-term, but he decided that maybe people were too accustomed to the way he does things. So I would suggest that people move their vehicle after 2 hours for the next little while. And that is about it for his. Smoking warnings are back up again because the weather is nicer and people have started going outside again. And our calls for service, as I say, they were up to 323, so up by 52 over the last month. A lot of that, again, is the young officers finding things or stopping more cars, giving out more tickets because they're all documented calls. Of note, I guess the crimes per person were up by a few, but they are only, there were 7 threats and 9 assaults. And crimes against property, we do have an increase in thefts from motor vehicles. So again, with the nicer weather comes people around in the middle of the night, so lock your cars and take your valuables out. And other than that, there was nothing drastic in that. So any questions on any of that?
All right, thank you very much. Are there any questions for the chief? You're getting off easy.
So easy.
Thank you. All right, engineering and public works.
Thank you, Worship. Quick report. As I've been reporting in the past, the public works staff meet on a daily basis just to go over operations. No surprise that most of our calls right now are regarding the road conditions and potholes, and I think I gave a pretty thorough explanation to you folks at the last meeting with respect to the timing. We have purchased more of the quick patch, so we will do our best, but the bulk of the asphalt aspect of pothole repairs will not happen till the middle of May, towards the end of May leading up to apple blossom. We've noted here we have a deadline of April 15th for the deadline for applications for the director's position. We had a little hiccup with respect to some of the advertising of the position, so for the applicants we thought it would be fair to keep it out there for 10 extra days. Primary calls for service potholes, I've noted that. Also, properties that were damaged during snow removal season are being inventoried. So Kirsten is assisting with that, so we get a complaint about some sod or grass or something, we'll go out and inventory that and do our best to have it repaired quickly. We have a high volume of curb cuts this time of year, and I guess the director had said earlier about the development activity, and I guess they go hand in hand quite often. So lots of activity in the development side. Street sweeping will soon start as well. We will get out on that. I think the machine is expected this week. It's had some kind of significant repairs, so once that's completed, and if I can't see outside now, if we're not plowing snow, we'll be sweeping the streets soon. The Water Commission continues to operate and under the compliance standards. And I'd say that's the report.
Thank you very much. Councillor Maxwell.
I'm going to ask a question about the garbage can on Oak Dean Avenue at the lower end. I've had quite a few seniors talking to me about when it's going to come back, especially those that walk their dogs.
So I know that was a timely, an extended amount of time associated with getting the can in the right color. But if we have activity out there, we put something there on a temporary basis.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so just remind me the exact location?
Kind of at the corner of Belcher and Oak Dean, just up a little ways.
Yep.
On the hill.
Very good. Okay.
Deputy Mayor.
Well, thank you, Your Worship.
With respect to the applicants and it being extended to the 15th of April, if there aren't suitable applicants, is that something we're looking at extending for another year, leaving that position vacant, possibly?
No, that's not the plan. And again, based on the applicants that we've received to date, at least on paper, they look like they're good applicants. Majority of the folks that had applied before, they were all contacted. And I don't know that I can say 100%, but the majority of them said, yes, I'm still interested.
Oh, okay,
And
okay.
then since then, I've had additional applicants.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? All right, moving on to admin. Oh, Councillor Andrew, please.
Just wondering if we could take a biological break in the next short while.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm
I would echo.
just extremely dry.
All right,
Yeah.
we'll take a break. CEO can wait. So mic's off, 5.
Sorry, I would have waited another couple minutes if I realized what was happening.
Okay, CAO, it's your turn.
Thank you, Worship. Valley Waste Resource Management, a special meeting of the board, mayors, and CAOs was held, did I say March? I meant to say today, April 8th, to discuss ongoing issues associated with Annapolis County's departure and the right sizing of the organization. So there's been a flurry of kind of meetings of the CAO working group and the board and different folks over the last couple weeks, but certainly the last day or two. So can't speak about the issues here because they're legal in nature with respect to Annapolis County and their departure, but I think we have good alignment between the board and the parties, which is essentially each municipal unit. So anyway, we're moving along with that file. King's Transit, nothing to report at this time. Police Commission, again, nothing I would report, but to say that collective bargaining has been initiated and a meeting of the two parties is scheduled for a preliminary review of the agreement and remuneration related issues. Regional Sewer Authority, normal operations, approval of the operating capital budget is now sitting with Kings County Council, as each of the partners had approval, including ourselves, for the budget. Now it goes on to the county, who of course owns and operates the asset. Union negotiations, I've made a note about police, as with CUPE. Both contracts expired the end of March. And that means we just carry on with the same language, by the way. I'm sure you know that. Kentville Business Park, two separate inquiries. This is really from the last report, but we really are getting closer, I think, to two lots for one operation. So they've been in contact with Bev, I know, from a planning point of view, and they've been here several times visiting and planning and scoping. And our realtor, yes, has been in discussion with the purchaser, the potential purchaser. So when we have something on paper, we'll bring it here for you to consider. Former KCA, again, exciting. We've talked about these things enough that to try to withhold your comments because it's like something, it's like waiting for Christmas or something. It just can't come soon enough. But there is, again, a flurry of activity that are strong indications that they'll get that project started this year. And, it's not a secret anymore. Encore is a developer, Bedford-based Halifax developer, and we're very happy to have them here and look forward to their development and it shaping up as we had anticipated. And we do have some safeguards, of course, in the purchase and sale agreement that encourages them to do what they said they were going to do in the way that they said they would do it. So no indication yet that they've deviated from those plans. It's just we need to get it started. The Culkin building has, I think in Lindsay's report, and whether it's that building or any other building or Zach's reference to 96% occupancy, folks.
Happy dance.
Those are good signs of activity and places where people want to be. And, everyone should share in that, as well as council's role in the business community and the community groups that we've heard from tonight and different folks. So it's very encouraging. And in particular with buildings, we talk about real estate sales primarily in the residential area and the value of the homes and the turnover. We're seeing that same kind of support with respect to the buildings downtown, which for the most part don't hang around very long when they're for sale. So that's a good sign. My meetings are indicated there. Probably the Wren was kind of a highlight, just that anytime you get a number of partners like that in a room, joint council meetings, from a staff point of view, you never know what could happen. But from a Wren point of view, I thought it was well conducted, and Sandra chaired part of that, and folks had an opportunity to speak and ask questions about the Wren. We are through another year, so to speak, so Wolfville has departed, so we have not received notice from anyone else, and they require that year's notice otherwise. So from my point of view, I'm sure the mayor would agree that the Wren is positioned now for the next year to move forward and succeed without burden, if we would say that, now that the onus is on the board and staff to produce and perform. I guess that's all I would note for highlights. that's my report.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Councillor Bolland.
Thank you, Bishop. Mr. CEO, we're going to be into budget deliberations soon, et cetera. But with collective bargaining going on and there's other labor issues, how much time do we have to settle those items? Obviously, they would have an impact on our budget. Is there, well, there is timelines. Any projection on when those will be wrapped up? I mean, they're just starting.
So from a fiscal point of view, without tipping our hand as to what we would anticipate a settlement would be, we do set reserves aside. So from a financial point of view, we will have covered off what we anticipate it will cost us. Then it's just a matter of timing. So I'd like to settle collective agreements sooner than later, but if the time is extended, then fiscally it really doesn't matter, because we have set the funds aside as what we anticipate a settlement will be. The only risk financially is if we were to settle, which is your decision, above what we think we should settle for, or if it went to arbitration and the arbitrator awarded something beyond what we had budgeted. So fiscally, to answer your question, there's really no risk. Time, for the most part, it's typically up to the union. Police has taken a little bit longer in the past than CUPE, but I think there's ambition and interest to move forward a little bit more quickly this go around. So I think the chief would.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Are there any further questions for the CAO? All right. It's all good.
Yeah. What's the next one? Communication?
Communication. Yep.
So, oops. Well, you can probably, you know what I'm going to say with communications. It is there for you to review, and the highlights are there. Jennifer, do you have anything to add about the website? I'm going to put you on the spot.
Last time I was put on the spot, got into a lot of
That's
trouble.
why I'm doing it at this
Thank you,
time.
Mark. I
Yeah,
appreciate
it's
that.
all good.
The website, hopefully we can pull that up. I did provide a little bit more detail at the bottom of that page about, no, up a little bit, about the process. So our design firm Glaze is leading this, and we're supporting them. And they've completed the content design phase. They've completed the user interface design phase. And some of these areas I'm not as comfortable talking about. This would be more of like a Jason question. Application development, that phase is complete. So right now we're in the build out phase. So they've given us April. That's when they've allotted the time for the build out of the website now that these other phases are complete. So there were really a lot of things that needed to be cleaned up before they could go and put the entire site together.
Okay. That's our report. If there's any questions about what we're doing or how we're doing it?
Any questions? There being no questions, could we have a motion to adopt the staff reports as presented? Thank you. Thank you. It's been moved and seconded that staff reports be adopted as presented. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Motion is carried unanimously. Thank you. All right, we're moving on to unfinished business, and our first matter under unfinished business is the smoking bylaw.
Second time around, and I'm a little more versed in what I'm supposed to do this time with the amendments, or actually the rescinding of the Chapter 84 smoke-free public places and the replacing of that bylaw with the amendments. So this came as a request from the Board of Police Commissioners to look at the current smoke-free bylaw regarding the smoking of cannabis within the town of Kentville. And the previous bylaw did not cover that. And as well, the other gap that was in the previous bylaw was around vaping and an increased definition for public places. So it is my recommendation, I think you all have a copy of the suggested changes, but I'll go through them in a second. Actually, I'll go through them now. So the additions were that we add a section for electronic cigarettes, meaning a vaporizer or inhalant type device, whether called an electronic cigarette or any other name, containing a power source and a heating element designed to heat a substance and produce a vapor intended to be inhaled. So that is the first addition. The second addition would be to add on to the public places definition, to add includes a place where the public has access and/or is open to the public where the restriction of smoking is prohibited by signage. I'll explain that one a little bit. So currently we have some alleyways that are actually privately owned. They have been given signs from the town of Kentville in whatever process, I'm not sure, but they have posted their sign of Kentville no smoking signs. However, it is private property. So if we were to try to enforce that, we would require the property owner to be a witness and then potentially go to court under the Private Property Act, because it does not meet the standard for the current bylaw, which says land, structures, or facilities owned or leased by the town, because they are not. They are private property. So we would add on that piece that says where smoking is prohibited by signage, and that would allow us to cover that. And the third addition would be to the definition of smoke, and that would be smoke means to smoke, inhale, or exhale smoke from, burn, carry, hold, or otherwise have control over a lit or heated cigarette, cannabis, cigar, pipe, water pipe, electronic cigarette, or heats tobacco, not sure what that means, sorry, and another substance that is intended to be smoked or inhaled. So that just broadens the definition of smoke, which previously said cigarettes, cigar, or pipe. So that allows us to cover much more of, actually what's much more of a modern kind of what you see young people doing. There's a lot of vaping. We have a new store across the way that's all about vaping, and the original intent, which was cannabis. I will say we are not really seeing a cannabis problem right now, and I will knock on wood and hope that the spring doesn't bring that more out, but we're not seeing that, but we are definitely seeing vapes. So those are the three changes that we would like to have put in a new bylaw. So the recommendation is that the current bylaw 84, smoke-free public places, be rescinded and replaced with bylaw, I didn't have the number, 99, that includes cannabis and expands the term smoking to include vaping or other methods of inhaling substances.
So, Your Worship, if I could just jump in here.
Certainly.
The solicitor and I have had an opportunity during the meeting. We were paying attention to you all, for sure. So what I'd like to ask for you is a little grace or lenience on this, that you support the principle of what the chief is suggesting, but we have some language pieces that the solicitor would like to work on between now and council. So if you support this in principle, we'll move it forward. We're desperately trying to move it forward, and trust in us that we will make those language changes that the solicitor has already provided to me between now and council. So when it appears before you in council, it'll capture the spirit of what the chief has said, but you'll have the exact wording so that you can officially repeal the old one and bring in the new one. We didn't want to rescind the existing one tonight and wait for the new one and have a period of time where you could do whatever you want. Imagine that in Kentville around smoking. So we're asking for your endorsement, Your Worship, and the ability to bring a final draft to council at the end of the month.
Okay, thank you. So we have a recommendation that Chapter 84 Smoke-Free Public Places bylaw be rescinded and replaced with the revised bylaw Chapter 99 Smoke-Free Public Places. This revision will include expanded definitions covering cannabis, public places, and smoking to include vaping or other methods of inhaling substances. The attached revised bylaw Chapter 99 Smoke-Free Public Places be sent to the April 29th council meeting for first reading. Thank you. Thank you. So it's been moved and seconded that council advisory forward the recommendations for this bylaw. Is there any further discussion? Councillor Bolland.
Thank you, Worship. I think it's also important that we have, I guess, an old adage I've used years ago with the idling campaign, education then legislation. So will there be an educational piece to this? Some signage in these alleyways, signage near the vape shop across the street, etc. It's not fair to challenge and charge young people for vaping if they're not aware of the legislation. So could there be some signage in select areas?
I'm not sure I think it's necessary, because
No?
we have already been addressing the, we've basically, if we see somebody vaping, we say you can't do that in Kentville, because we're kind of going with the they don't know the exact wording. And so we don't lay charges anyway in those cases. We just say you can't do that here. So I think it's already, the public already thinks they can't. So we can do something on our Facebook page, which we have, over 3,000 followers, so the word will spread pretty quickly.
I mean, there may be select areas in town that staff would acknowledge that those are areas where it's happening around the certain coffee shops across the...
Well, it's
that's what I'm saying.
There's
Just to
definitely
create
an alleyway
awareness.
beside a coffee shop that is frequently used, but it is technically private property. So we do go in. I went in the other day, just myself, and said, you can't do that here, and people believe us.
I mean,
So-
Center Square is a perfect place that, when Apple Blossom's a month away, et cetera. So anyway, just some comments. I think there should be some kind of signage as well to create that awareness.
Your Worship, if I might, and I've said this before, it is illegal to smoke in the town of Kentville. And smoking is an all-encompassing definition under the current bylaw. So it gives examples, essentially. But if you are smoking, then it is illegal on town property in the town of Kentville. And it's not limited to pipes or cigarettes or anything else, so that would include vaping, and the public should just be aware of that.
Well, it does say tobacco, though, and then if evidence to the contrary.
Sorry,
so-
I was speaking of tobacco.
Yeah.
So if it involves tobacco, okay, and so I just want to make sure that that's clear in the public sphere.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion? Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Worship. So I just have a question, because it's a little bit. So on the private property, i.e. that alleyway there, that's owned privately, this 99 would mean that they can't even smoke there
Right, so-
on private property.
Right, we would be amending it to include areas where the public has access to. So that alleyway would then become an area that the public has an access to, and we would be covered as long as they had a sign up.
So then essentially, there's absolutely nowhere in
Pretty
the town
much.
of Kentville, if people are outside, that they can smoke unless they're on their own property. Home property, I mean.
Private property that is not signed.
Right, right.
So any private property that is not signed.
But you're proposing that we sign them?
That would be up to the individual owners of the property.
Right, okay.
So currently, they have signs up.
Right.
That they got from the town of Kentville.
Okay.
That really, the town of Kentville one applies only to public streets and such.
I see, okay.
But they've gotten the signs and put them up, and we enforce them, we don't lay a ticket.
Right, okay.
But we do go in and tell them they can't do it.
Okay, okay, thank you.
Any further discussion? Are you ready for the question? So the question is on recommendation that the Town of Kentville, Chapter 84, Smoke-Free Public Places bylaw be rescinded and replaced with the revised bylaw, Town of Kentville, Chapter 99, Smoke-Free Public Places. Voting is open. I'm the only one that hasn't voted. Voting is now closed. And the motion is carried unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chief. All right, moving on to our next piece of unfinished business, Nova Scotia Power, Inc., property easements, Yale.
No update on that, Your Worship? Still working on the file.
All right, moving on then.
Correspondence?
Correspondence, yes, please.
So we had an email, correct?
Yes, it was an email.
So an email, and then Your Worship has drafted a draft letter of support for your consideration. So the request is the Valley Wildcats, who are out of Berwick right now, but certainly a Valley-based team, are looking to host the 2021 TELUS Cup, which is the national hockey championship for midget and midgets 15 to 18-year-olds in Wolf Academy University. So they're looking for letters of support from each of the municipal units in the area to support their bid application. By no means have been successful yet in the application, but they will forward a bid, and they're looking for letters. So you want me to read that, or does it seem?
No, it's just a matter of support. And the big thing that you have to realize here is that we are not committing any financial support. This is 2021, so that's not even part of our term. But as well, once they have the bid in place, then they'll come to the respective municipalities looking for funding. And the CAO has provided one piece of information that wasn't in the correspondence, is the fact that this would be held at Acadia.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right.
So you had inside track on
Oh,
it.
I had the inside track.
Okay, it's all good then.
I'm just thinking, was that a secret? No, it wasn't.
It's not now. All right, so I will draft a letter tomorrow to be part of this bid process. So thank you for your support. All right. Correspondence, new business. All right, thank you. So we have a request from the Hardware Gallery, and the bottom line in bold is that they're looking for a lease agreement that provides at least until the end of September of this year, so I'm going to assume 2019, to stay in the current space.
What's your wishes?
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. So I'm going to pose a question to Solicitor Matart, if I could. So we have the building advertised for a certain purchase price, a sale price. If I'm thinking, so if somebody purchases the property from us, I suppose we can write anything in a purchase and sale agreement in terms of who can stay and who can't, or maybe we can't do that. I'm thinking of ways that we could amend the purchase price or not.
You simply accept offers, and a buyer, in doing their due diligence in proposing offers, will know what leases are there and how long the tenant's there for and what the rent is that's being paid. So they'll know that coming in when they make you an offer.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So I don't think that you need to look out for buyers. Buyers will look out for themselves.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Maxwell.
I can appreciate that this would put the Hardware Gallery in an awkward position. And I think they've done a reasonable job of building the gallery, and I think they're getting reasonable support. And now that they've reached a point where they can apply for, government funding, I don't feel very good about pulling the carpet out from underneath them, so to speak. The reason that we, gave them the lease agreement that they have is because we wanted to help them build that as a viable project within the town of Kentville, and I think it is, and I think people are appreciating it. And so I don't have a problem at all with extending the lease agreement until the end of September. I think it's a reasonable ask for them at this point.
Thank you. Councillor Pulsifer.
Thank you, Your Worship. I also think along the same lines of providing that support to them for those last 6 months. I think, it'll allow them to honor their artists' programming and until that time, and I think that's extremely important to the credibility of the gallery. And I think, it's a welcome addition to Kentville, and if we can, support them in any way along these next few months, and I think that's my opinion anyways.
Thank you. Councillor Bolland.
Thank you, Your Worship. I concur with my colleagues. I think, let's put the sale of the building aside and the financial issues. But, I personally, we made a commitment to them. 6 months is nothing. excuse me, they've made commitments to other artisans to display there, and there's that piece. I just think it would be the wrong thing to do. I would go home tonight thinking it was a bad decision. I think it's only 6 months. And at the end of the day, you weigh it all out, and no, I want to support them for another 6 months, and again, work with them, and maybe there's other avenues, roads in town, after 6 months, inside our town borders, to keep the artisans here and the attraction here. So they're starting to roll. We want to get them running, and they've got visitors coming in. They work with us in the Devour Festival, so I don't know. I just want to give them that window there. So
Thank you.
thank you.
Your Worship, the solicitor is just reminding me, you do have a motion of council right now displaying your support. So you should consider that and whether you need to rescind that if you're moving in a different direction. Again, we do have that essentially already there. So it is the month, so you should consider whether you rescind that if you're heading in the direction of the 6-month support, and then reintroduce a new motion. I will just state, I have to note, we certainly support the art gallery and their activity, but if your priority is to sell the building, then this does have the potential impact to affect the saleability of the building. I'm not speaking against the art gallery in any way, but you have two things to consider here. Really your prioritization of the timing associated with the sale of the building and supporting a community group. So I know you're weighing those two things. We do not have the Culkin Building commercial tax sale built into our budgets yet. If the building were to sell, then it would immediately, collect commercial tax, which on an annual basis is about $12,000. So that is just something you need to continue to consider as a reciprocal effect as you consider the support of the art gallery. So again, but first things first, I think you should consider the existing motion of rescinding that and then reintroducing what level of support you want to provide to them.
And if I might, Your Worship, just to tack on the end of that, just so that everyone's clear, there is an existing lease. It ends, as I recall, April the 14th, I think. And if the tenant stays in possession without any formal amendment, then it defaults to month. Council's resolution was to enter into an extension of the lease month to month. So if tonight you decide to do something else, that extension of lease hasn't gone anywhere, because that's not what the tenant wants. So if tonight it's CAC's recommendation to council to extend the lease from April the 15th to the end of September, is what I heard, and I see a nod from the audience, then perhaps that would be the resolution tonight to replace the prior resolution, that it now be an extension to the end of September.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. So if we put a lease in place, we'd put a 6-month lease in place at X amount of dollars a month, and a purchaser came along, we could build something in there, though, could we not, that they could perhaps, because they may be in kegs might be in a different position where they could pay more money, and we could keep something open there for them to negotiate that with a potential purchaser.
So, am I still on?
Yep.
You could. It doesn't provide what the tenants asked for in the way of certainty.
So
because it may not be agreed upon, in which case the new owner tells them to get out.
Right. So the ask is for till the end of September at $10 per month. That's the same as what they have now, right? Okay.
Secured residency.
Yeah.
Occupancy.
Yeah. Councillor Bolland.
Thank you, Worship. Again, my support for this is based on, there's no financial receivable issues or anything. There's no, is everything up to date financially with them? And
It is now.
Yeah, I say I'm confident in that, but we're talking $10 a month. I'm sure if it's not paid, it can be paid really quickly. So I just say that in good faith. I think it is.
Yes, it is now. I confirmed that today.
Thank you.
But it was overdue. They had not paid for the first 6 months that they were in there and then paid up. I don't know. Councillor Maxwell.
Just want to ask the solicitor, we don't have any firm offers right now on the building. How long approximately does it take to negotiate a sale to final completion?
A sale?
Yeah, sale of that building.
You could have an offer before the next council meeting and accept it, and the buyer might want to close right away.
Okay. So they would know, they would know if we made this extension to the lease, that would be part of a sale. Right?
Yeah, any buyer is going to be aware of the existing leases and the obligations that they inherit as the new owner.
And we have a tenant in the other part of the building, and they would know that as well. So,
Absolutely.
yeah. I still feel strongly about this.
Deputy Mayor.
How many square feet is the space that they occupy now, roughly?
I think it's about 800 square feet by the lease, and just over 700.
How many square feet is the building? Sorry.
Each level is approximately 3,000 square feet.
Each level?
Each level. Now, of course, that area is, again, Jennifer probably knows it, roughly between 800 and 900 per unit. And then we have some shared space, whether it's a kitchen or bathroom. So for the most part, each tenant is between 700 and 900 square feet, plus the shared space.
So it's about 13% of the building.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, rentable space.
That's what I mean. I'm talking rentable space.
Okay, rentable space. Currently, the basement is not rentable, so you can remove 1,000 square feet from the equation. And the second level arguably is questionable depending on the nature of the square area.
Yeah.
The diagram? Yeah, sure.
It's the square footage.
Yeah. So the upstairs, due to fire code related issues, is questionable as to what can go in there and what can go in there without a secondary fire exit and so forth. So I don't think the cafe is exactly 1,200 square feet. But anyway, those numbers aren't too far off.
Okay. And then the second floor, the top floor is?
It will be, well, I guess it's closer to 3,600 square feet.
Okay.
The entire second floor.
Yeah, okay. Yep.
There's a full basement and a full upstairs where some places, right?
Sure, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so less than 13. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, well, I think everyone has had an opportunity to speak on this. So I guess it's my turn to speak. And one thing that I've learned in this job is that it's a lot about how you make people feel. And I have to say that this letter, this report, did not make me feel very good. Particularly the use of all caps and bold, to talk about struggle and volunteer time, and we have a lot of volunteers in this town, and we have people who've given years and years of service as well. And we had, I'm going to call them those superheroes here on last weekend, and we celebrated them. So we do have a lot of people in this town who volunteer and who give freely of their time. And to talk about terribly disappointing that the town and this council hasn't supported this gallery, for me is actually a heartbreak. Because I have felt very passionately about this gallery, but I feel like I've had dirt kicked in my face with this letter. We have supported you, and the taxpayers of Kentville have supported this initiative, and we've asked for nothing in return. and you've done a marvelous job. And it would have been nice if you had have come to us, and I'm not asking for you to come to us with hat in hand, but had have come to us in celebration of what's been achieved, as opposed to putting it on our backs, that we need to decide immediately if we ultimately support a gallery. Because we have been very, very supportive of this gallery. So I guess what we need now is a motion, one that rescinds the existing lease and builds a new lease. So if I could have...
If I could just clarify that.
Certainly.
It's the last motion of council that you're rescinding, not the lease.
Okay, so we need a date from that motion of council?
Or I think it's sufficient to pass a resolution here tonight that that staff be instructed to negotiate an extension of the current lease to the end of September 2019. And by implication, that deals with the last resolution, because staff were instructed to negotiate at that point, I believe. That was unsuccessful.
So staff negotiate?
And that then is a direction from CAC to staff. Hopefully that will conclude before the council meeting, and staff can bring that to the council meeting.
Okay. So negotiate lease extension, is that the correct wording?
Yes.
Okay. Councillor Maxwell.
I would like to make that motion.
Thank you.
I'd just like to say that, though, that I believe that, well, I'm sorry that the mayor feels the way that she did with getting sand kicked in the face, but I imagine this group probably felt that they had the rug pulled out from underneath them, and their letter is more emotional than anything else, and I don't think for 1 minute that they meant to say that we didn't support them and that they don't appreciate that support. So for that reason, I would like to rescind the previous motion and extend the lease to the end of September.
Thank you. Councillor Bolland?
Thank you, Bishop. So just for clarity, so this will go back to staff and then come back to us at CAC next month to get a report on what the negotiation firmed up after we rescind the first one, or where's the... Because there may be negotiation, but it may not work out.
I really don't, I think we're using the word negotiation as more of a form of direction.
Yeah.
I don't anticipate a whole lot of negotiation. They've asked for the same terms that they've had for the last 15 months, and we would extend that to them with your support. So it's really about getting something finalized between now and April council for you to endorse at that time, formally.
Yeah, so if there's any change of feeling, April council is our second chance to debate it, obviously. So. Yeah.
All right. Deputy Mayor.
I'm sorry. I just have a thought. So they had mentioned about had sort of looked at some crowdsourcing and sponsorship, public funding, and now they can get monies from that are project based. So I think if I understand it correctly, any additional funds they get through grants, they can't use them for rent.
Well, potentially, I can't speak to them, but if they're saving money on programming, they may have the ability to channel resources somewhere else. But I think, though, unless you're putting that condition on it, what I'm hearing within the discussion is it really doesn't matter what happens in the next 6 months. You're guaranteeing them the same terms and conditions.
The same $10.
Within that period of time.
Regardless if they're able to pay more in terms of market rent.
Unless you're putting some condition on motion, but I'm not hearing that yet.
Is there a seconder on the motion?
Not yet. So the motion is staff negotiate a lease extension with Hardware Gallery. Councillor Maxwell has made that motion. Councillor Bolland, thank you. All right, so we have a motion that has been moved and seconded that staff negotiate a lease extension with the Hardware Gallery. Is there any discussion? There being no discussion, are we ready? And the voting is open. Voting is now closed. And the motion is carried with one dissenting vote. Thank you. Okay, moving on to Kentville Business Community, the LUB amendment request.
Okay, Your Worship, so I can perhaps bring up Zach's report here. That might be the best way to revisit. Oh, unless it's Jennifer. You probably put it back here, didn't you?
There it is.
There it is. So, you have 3 requests for amendments to the land use bylaw. One is the maximum size of ground signage to be returned to the 75 square feet for the C1 zone versus what it is currently and was recently amended to, which is 25 square feet. The second request is the amendment for the restriction on window signage to be lifted and allow the upper level window signage, if occupied, by a commercial tenant. And the third one is commercial tenants in multi-unit commercial buildings who do not have street frontage, that they would be permitted one wall sign up to 20 square feet on the facade of the building. So,
Councillor Andrew.
I don't like the size of the sign idea, but we've got, I know we are already working where we have different zones with different, different allowances. It almost seems that there should be, if we're going to look at this kind of thing, it does make sense at the tire shop across the bridge or whatever, but it almost seems like there should be that area of town that's the pedestrian area, the square. To me, that would be ridiculous to have a sign that large anywhere in the square. So I don't know. I think we need to almost have this explored a little bit. This is almost a go to staff kind of thing, and maybe we do have to discuss, is there a kind of a pedestrian friendly, we want to make it a friendly, warm downtown, and that's why I alluded to that. And maybe I didn't realize Open Arms was the first applicant of that, but it was really, it was an ode to the past. It was supposed to be, have a little bit, and I don't know that it was really pulled off so well, but if we're going to go that direction, if you look at, even Hardware Gallery, like their signage is so, it's cute, it's discreet, it fits, and 500 meters away, probably it's fine to have in front of the Cornwallis Inn a big giant sign, but it doesn't work in the square, and so I would not support that at all.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. I would agree with Councillor Ballin, or John, sorry. Andrew, the guy next to me. Look, I didn't even know what 75 square feet was, so anyway, I'm not in a position to make this decision. I think it should be sent back to our Director of Planning. That's my thought. I'll make that motion.
Thank you. We'll finish with all the, Councillor Ballin, please.
Thank you. Thank you. I agree with my colleagues. We'll leave it at that. But I'm going to echo on point number 2 that the CEO mentioned. I mean, just envision, I won't mention the building downtown, but it's got 15 or 18 commercial tenants, and suddenly you've got 15 or 18 signs. I mean, so there should be a limit on that. There certainly should be a limit. It'd be a dream to have every building filled, but I'm just, maybe 50 square feet is a compromise over 75. But, at the end of the day, time is on our side. I certainly think we should send it back to the director to look at it. Because we don't want to overkill on signage. And again, like you said, Cornwall in that replacement, that's fine, but, yeah. So,
Councillor Maxwell.
Yeah, the 75 feet, I agree with Councillor Andrew that, having that on the block, we'll call it, downtown is just, would be ridiculous. So I think that needs to be looked at, even if we can designate that particular area as being one where you don't have that size of a sign. Other areas of town where maybe there's business going on, maybe that's acceptable, but I think on the block, not so much. As for the multi-unit commercial buildings, I've seen all kinds of different ways that can be done, like a light pole with different, signs on it outside, and there's ways to give them that without having it plastered up on the side of those. So I think maybe, going back to staff and having them look at that might be a good idea.
Councillor Pulsifer.
Thank you, Your Worship. I guess one size doesn't fit all, really. So, it's kind of simple. So I think it just needs to be sent back to staff for some reworking, right?
Exactly, exactly. Now, having been on the committee where we talked about signs, and we spent a long time talking about signs, like, I have to tell you this. So the big sign thing was meant for big places. And I have to say that the director was much, exactly as Councillor Maxwell said, plastering the side of the building. And what she said was, the nice stand-up one where it's got the kind of the directory of businesses. That makes perfect sense, and that's already in our LUB. And if you think of number 2, think about Sherry's business across the street here. So we have Valley Stove and Cycle on the bottom, and Sherry's got her Swan One sign up on the second floor because that's where her business is. We don't have a whole lot of businesses that are actually on the second floor of our downtown businesses, but we have had businesses put signs up there because they're in the building. So, that's one of those balancing acts, and that's where we've gotten ourselves into trouble, because people feel that if they're in the building, that they should be able to plaster their sign around the entire building. And so I just wanted to bring that perspective back from our meetings.
Well, if I may, the difficulty is a lot of this stuff is so subjective. We don't have the staffing. We don't want to have every proposal for a sign brought before council. Neither do we want to pay our town planner to go out, kind of with a measuring tape, measuring signs. So we end up in where a lot of this is very subjective. So we could have spent far more time than we did, in fact, on that very discussion.
Exactly. So, Deputy Mayor, I think you were prepared to make a motion?
yes, I will make a motion that we send back KBC's recommendations, requests back to our planner.
Okay. Thank you. Jennifer, you got all that? Yeah. Beauty.
And council, I'll take the one size doesn't fit all comment back. I like that one. And, but I'm feeling a spirit of compromise. So somewhere's in between where we were and where we are. But keeping in mind some of the points that were made about downtown. So, okay.
And I think that everyone has said it, that we want to feel downtown, and we want that to continue, because I think that we've reached a really nice balance, the way buildings are starting to look. And Councillor Andrew, I have to, I wanted to laugh out loud when you were talking about the original facade, because having looked at that book, there were like gaggy things in it. I just want to put that out there. You think of Valley Stove and Cycle and that beautiful job that they did, and according to our manual, that wasn't allowed. And that is that was one of the premier beautiful buildings that was redone, and so that original facade manual was kind of gaggy. Yeah.
Your Worship, the other thing worth noting here, I hope it's not a soapbox thing here, but KBC has come forward as an advocate of the business community. And, you know, we've had a time in our history here in the last 10 years where you'll have an individual come in and make a presentation. We say, well, where's the rest of the business community? So the structure and the process is working. You know, they're an advocate and they're here looking for something, and, you know, so it's positive.
That's excellent. Okay, is there any further discussion? Question? All those in favor of sending the KBC recommendation back to staff? Are we voting online? Motion, voting is open. Voting is closed, and it passes unanimously. All right, public comment. The floor is now open to the public. Please state your name and address, subject matter. You have 10 minutes.
Your Worship?
Oh, sorry.
You had added a new item to new business.
Oh, did I?
Bursary
Bursary committee, yes. No, it's just that we've never assigned it. That's the problem. No, it's not in our listing for bursary committee. Every year, yes, every year you have done it, but we don't have it listed. So therefore, by the rules, we have to re-up it every year. And this is the time of year. So are you volunteering your name, Councillor Maxwell? Is there anyone else who wishes to be the council member on the bursary committee? Is there anyone else who wants to be the member on the bursary committee? Is there anyone else who wants to be the member on the bursary committee? I have to say it 3 times, that's the rules. There is no further nominations, so therefore by acclamation, Councillor Maxwell is our bursary council member. And if you could give the names of the 2 civilian members, or 3 civilian members who were with you to Jennifer after the meeting, we'd appreciate that, thank you. It's been lost in translation, I'm afraid.
And Jennifer's going to leave this file here. Pat's out for a little bit, so she'll leave this file administratively.
All right, so now I've got all of new business done. Okay, public comments? Gary, no? You're just here for the popcorn and entertainment.
Get on this side of the camera.
All right, then, council has confidential land business concerning land, which must be conducted in the closed session. So we require a motion to go into the closed session to discuss the agenda item. Thank you. And do I have a seconder? Thank you. So it's been moved and seconded that this meeting move into a closed session. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. The time is 21:41. 21:41. All right, if you need to pee, go now.